Hello there, and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 16, episode 44. We are live with Abdel, and this episode is sponsored by Sideshift, Citrea, Bitcoin.com News, Layer2 Labs, and NoOnes.com. Abdel is a very special kind of person because right now he is working on Bitcoin and is a Bitcoin maximalist, and he has infinity divided by 21 million in his profile. But at the same time, like 7 years ago, he was working at ConsenSys and he was an Ethereum core developer. And it's quite an interesting journey, and we're here to talk about it. So it's good to have you, Abdel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Yeah, indeed, I'm a weird animal in this space. I cannot think about anyone else in the same, like, that went from Ethereum core dev to kind of Bitcoin maximalism. I did see like examples the other way around, but not for, yeah. So yeah, happy to talk about that. Yeah.
I know a guy named Mario who went from hardcore BTC maxi to working as an Ethereum core developer. So
Yes, I know this guy. Yeah, yeah.
very bright guy. Like, I have a
Yes,
lot of respect for him.
same for me. Yeah.
So what's your story? Why did you start with Ethereum at first, and what is it that you find interesting about Bitcoin today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it's funny because I mean, I did not start right away with Ethereum. I mean, I knew Bitcoin before I knew Ethereum, but it was more as a hobby. It was not me working in the space actively and so on. But yeah, I heard about Bitcoin very early, like 2011, 2012. But it was not sufficient to strike me and to leave everything else on my job and so on. But I was curious about it first on the technical level, so trying to check a bit the code, and understand how it works and everything. But at this time, retrospectively, I think I was not mature enough to understand the potential impact of this, especially on the political level and on the economic aspect. I was too much into the tech aspect. That's why it's really when I discovered Ethereum, and it's about this idea to kind of like the next level in terms of something that is more ambitious, the world computer and so on, which was to me like very cool on the engineering front, and it was sufficient for me to kind of leave everything I was doing and try to consider working in that space and so on. But then even when I decided to leave my previous job, I was working in the fintech industry, which is funny because this is why I like to say that before fighting banks, I was working for them. And it actually was a very good opportunity to understand how broken is the fiat and bank system and so on. But it took me time to really understand it. But all my learnings from this period, working in the fintech industry, helped me when I actually understood the impact on the economical and political aspect of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's for me, even when I was working on Ethereum, I always I was always into Bitcoin, and I consider myself as a Bitcoiner. So like many years ago, even before joining Starkware, I was describing myself as a Bitcoin and Ethereum maximalist. So I never was only Ethereum, just to be clear. I was always Bitcoin and Ethereum. I always considered only those two as special, and only those two are kind of making sense to me. If the North Star is to build unstoppable systems that can resist to globally coordinated nation-state attacks. If this is not your goal, your North Star, okay, maybe you can consider something else. But because for me it was what was important to me, I always considered only those two. But then it's true that over the past 2 years, mostly, I kind of shifted a bit and became closer and closer to the Bitcoin side for different reasons. And I guess we will discuss more in details about those. But yeah, just wanted to say that I never was only Ethereum. I was, before I was like Bitcoin and Ethereum maximalist. And then I never considered like anything else as serious or something that was meaningful to me. On the philosophical aspect. Some of them are cool on the pure technical aspect. And it's interesting because I think there is this technical distraction for engineers that like to work on cool stuff, but sometimes it's a distraction that can make you forget about why we are doing all of that kind of. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the North Star, and in the way that you said it almost sounded like no stir, which is something else that you're working on and something that we can bring up later into the interview.
Yeah.
What I do want to ask you right now, to stay on topic, would you argue that having a background in fintech makes you more likely to look into DeFi and stuff that is built on Ethereum? Because basically Ethereum is an extension of fintech and just an attempt to make some of that decentralized?
It's a good question. I never thought about it, but I'm not sure because I was working specifically on payment solutions. So even when I was working on fintech, it was only on cloud-based payment solutions. So, like all solutions to pay with your phone using NFC and contactless technologies. So it was at the very beginning of contactless payments. So it was still on the payments front. So I never was really into like TradFi, advanced stuff, and so on in the normal world, I would say. So probably not, but it's interesting. Maybe like for some people working in fintech, they are more likely to be interested in DeFi. It's a good point. I never thought about it actually. But in my case specifically, I don't think so because I was working on payments specifically. Yeah.
What were your first contributions to Ethereum? Like, do you recall exactly what it was that you contributed to? And was it because of your background or because you discovered something that needed improvement?
Yeah, so I first started to play with it, like not on the protocol level, but trying to build applications with it, like trying to build some smart contracts and whatnot. So I played with various ideas, like just small stuff, some small games or some stuff to put, degrees on the blockchain, like to attest the validity of a diploma on the blockchain, this kind of stuff. But more to understand the architecture and how it looks like to build a decentralized application. It's really when I joined ConsenSys that I went into the protocol development as an Ethereum code developer. And my first contribution to Ethereum protocol was working on Besu, which is the Ethereum client implementation developed by ConsenSys. Initially, it had some ambition to be also used for kind of enterprise blockchain. This was also when it was in collaboration. JP Morgan was involved into that, and then ConsenSys brought the name, and then it became Hyperledger Besu. But I was working on the mainnet side of the Ethereum client, so something that is compatible with any other Ethereum client. And I spent actually 2 years working on one single thing, actually, which was an interesting turning point in my journey. It was EIP 1559, which was the introduction of the fee burn in Ethereum.
Ultrasound money, that's where it comes from.
Exactly. So it was very a turning point for me in my journey, actually. I think it shifted a lot of my perception and so on. And I was maybe like too much into it at that time when I was working into it, because I was the champion of it. Like, when there is an EIP, a proposal, usually you have one or multiple champion that will try to coordinate all the work and discuss with all the teams and make sure we're progressing and so on. So I was doing this work for EIP 1559 on the technical side. And I spent 2 years working on that. And it was extremely interesting on many levels because it was very important and impactful change on the technical front, but also on the economical side of things. And I learned also a lot about the governance of decentralized systems, also the dynamics with the miners at this time, because it was the discussion started before the merge, before the migration to proof of stake. So I learned so much on that. And then after it went to mainnet, I took more time to take a step back and think about the impact and consequences of that. And the fact that it's an interesting dilemma, because objectively it was a good change for Ethereum. I mean, if Ethereum started right away with it, it would be very good. But the fact that we changed it on the fly is an interesting precedent, because if you can you can argue that if you can do it for a good thing, maybe you can do it also for something bad. So it's very interesting trade-offs in terms of the governance of decentralized protocol. But yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking more about it and the consequences of changing the monetary policy on the fly and this kind of stuff. Yeah.
It is an interesting conversation because Ethereum has a lot of precedents that can lead to slippery slopes, from
Yes.
the hard fork from 2016, which basically tried to undo the harm of the DAO hacker, and all the way to changing the monetary policy and deciding that the transaction fees will be burned so that they're going to have a deflationary currency if they're going to have a lot of on-chain activity. It was really interesting. And I think at the time I was sort of critical because it felt like central banking, you know, a council of high officials or something getting together and deciding, well, let's do this with the currency. And if it doesn't work out, we can undo it anytime. And it's very unlike Bitcoin, where we all agreed that there's going to be this inflation schedule and this is the max supply and this is the way in which it's going to get distributed. And I think I've also come to terms with the fact that Ethereum is supposed to sort of be the anti-Bitcoin and do everything sort of the opposite of what Bitcoin is doing, just to experiment and to let builders play with stuff, because that's what Ethereum is about. I spoke about this during my interview with Vitalik. Ethereum is the most successful implementation of the Bitcoin 2.0 protocol, which was started with colored coins and counterparty and master coin / OmniLayer, which is also where Tether comes from. And there was a lot of competition at the time to see which protocol is going to emerge as the one that takes on this idea of using the blockchain to put tokens on it, to tokenize Wall Street assets, to put commodities, to create decentralized exchanges, to create decentralized organizations, and all of these ideas that initially came from Bitcoin. And it just happened that Ethereum sort of beat the competition. At the time, it was BitShares. It was, what was the other one? NXT. It was, once again, Mastercoin, which was also the first ICO. For some reason, Ethereum ended up becoming the successful one. And in their journey, they made a lot of decisions that are very anti-Bitcoin. And for a while, I was hoping that the Ethereum Classic fork was going to be the one to succeed, because it's the one that's closest to the spirit of Bitcoin.
Code is low.
There's a lot to be learned from this, because first of all, the market follows narratives, and the narrative for Ethereum was always the fact that they're building stuff, not that they have a fixed supply and that they try to be like Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I don't think it's on purpose, like to be anti-Bitcoin, but I see where you are coming from. And as for the fact that it makes you think about how it works with central banking, with some official gathering and saying that we can change the policy, I think it's not like that. I mean, it's much more decentralized, but totally, I see it's a precedent that it was possible to do that. But as I told you, first of all, it took more than 2 years to get this change, and actually more, because actually it was proposed by Vitalik in 2018. Then everyone said that it was too complex to implement it and so on. And then 1 year later, someone in ConsenSys that is now leading protocol development in the Ethereum Foundation asked me if I would take the challenge to try to push it. And I said yes, without knowing the implication of this rabbit hole. Just saying that, yes, it took a lot of involvement from many, many people and debates and exchanges with miners that were opposed to it. At some point, it was big. Like, you know, there was a big mining pools on Ethereum that started the Stop EIP 1559 initiative with a website and trying to encourage other miners to oppose to this change and so on. So, yeah, still, I think it was like, everything was transparent, discussed in public calls and whatnot. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a very big difference in comparison to Bitcoin. and the fact that there is this something where we all agree that we will never touch it. I mean, some people now start to think that maybe to fix the security budget we won't have the choice. I don't believe that, but I believe we need to think about other ways to fix the security budget. But yeah, in general, I agree with you that there is this consensus that this is something like we should never touch. And yeah, regarding what you said about like adding some precedents on Ethereum, this is exactly what I was discussing with Vitalik in 2022. You know the boiling frog syndrome, like this idea of like that. Yeah, for me, this is literally what I said to Vitalik at this time. We accumulate like some small changes. If you take them individually, you can argue that, okay, they are good, they are fine, etc. But then at some point you wake up and you realize that you are too weak to jump out of the water and you will just die. And I had, when I wrote this to him, it was when there was the introduction of a trusted setup on Ethereum to support the blobs on Ethereum. You know, now there are two markets, one for rollups that are sending data to Ethereum that is separate from the general fee market. And for this technique and this mechanism, which is called the donk sharding, it required the introduction of a trusted setup on Ethereum. And even if it was arguably the most properly executed and secure trusted setup ever, probably like with more than 100,000 participants, and I participated to it, so I know it was secure because you need only one honest participant. But still, I think it was a very bad precedent. I'm very anti-trusted setup in general. That's why also I prefer Starks over Snarks. But because the problem is that people in 10 years, they won't have the chance to have participated in the ceremony. So they will rely on the fact that there was someone that did it properly. So I think it's very bad. And I think ultimately that we did not invest sufficient time to analyze other alternatives. And at this time, we were trying to argue that maybe there would be a way to avoid the trusted setup using some primitive of Starks, which is called high. Without going into details, this would be something that would not require a trusted setup. But at this time, some people on Ethereum core development said, no, it won't be practical and it won't be efficient and so on. But it was a bit too rushed, in my opinion. That's why I was a bit mad and about this precedent. And that's when I felt that the temperature was too high and I had to jump. And yeah, but yeah, there are a lot of stuff like that, like the move from proof of work to proof of stake. The Premine itself is a precedent and everything. So yeah, I very much agree with what you said. And now it's risky, and I think that now there is also the fear of the market and the fear of maybe of Solana and this kind of stuff, and maybe where Ethereum is too much into like a response mode and trying to react and so on, and accelerating the upgrades and so on. And I think it's a very vicious cycle. But yeah, we can discuss more about that, because ultimately at the end of the day, for me, it's really important to consider the strengths of the social layer, because at the end of the day, this is what will protect the core principles of your blockchain. And it's an interesting topic, because if you take also the analogy on the Bitcoin side with the current filter war and stuff like that, you can also see the downsides of having a social layer that is very diverse, but also you have a lot of non-technical users that wants to participate in the governance and so on. It's hard, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna mention these non-technical users who never look at any piece of code and they just look at their high priests and they trust them absolutely, and they just follow the one who seems more, what's the nice word for it, like slightly autistic but at the same time knowledgeable.
Okay.
And they just conflate this state of radicalism and autism with knowledge. And there's this ideology that was built around Bitcoin, and I think it's specifically because of this ideology that a lot of people will dismiss everything that you do, because they will say, wait a second, this is the same guy who decided to change the monetary policy on Ethereum, and he's here building on Bitcoin. Like, how do we know he's not gonna try to destroy the 21 million supply?
Absolutely. It becomes a matter of debating who is pushing an idea as opposed to discussing the idea itself. So it's very interesting. We saw it very clearly with Opcat and all the drama with Taproot Wizards and with us and a lot of conspiracy theories and so on, which is pretty insane. So yeah, definitely, it's more about who is pushing an idea and so on. But at the same time, I do like actually the fact that there is involvement from non-technical users because to me, I see this is literally the opposite on Ethereum. And I think even if there is the downside of having those non-technical people having to trust by proxy someone at some point, I think still it's better than having a fully core dev and research-centric roadmap and so on, because especially if you accelerate the pace of upgrades and so on, it's very, very bad because you have newcomers, even if they want to be involved and understand the implications of the changes and so on, they are so overwhelmed because there are so many stuff going on in parallel, so many EIPs, so many stuff. So even if they wanted to, and actually very few want to, they cannot. They are just left out, and then it concentrates the power and the discussions among people that are experts. It's true. So then they are more legitimate to discuss and the technical implications and so on. But at the end of the day, I still believe it's very important to educate the social layer, including non-tech people, because if we want to be able to resist to nation state attacks and so on, we will need to have all those people also to help us on that. We cannot rely on just a small group of technical people because they can easily be captured or like put in jail and everything like that. So we also need to educate the people and for them to understand the trade-offs and why we are doing that and so on. For example, there is something that I really like in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and you can see it even in the tooling, in the wallets and so on. If you are using public RPC providers, you always have like some warnings to say, okay, it has some implication on your privacy and stuff like that, which is something that I don't really see in Ethereum ecosystem. Like everyone literally is fine using MetaMask connected to a public RPC and no one gives a shit about that, which is very bad. So I think it's very important to put this culture deeply into everything, even in user-facing stuff. Like just putting a warning to someone that is using a public RPC is very good. I think it's very important. And then people will question and they will try to understand, okay, why do I have this warning? Am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something and so on? I think it's very, very important. So even if it has some downsides, and we see it like with the filter war and some people that are debating stuff that they don't understand in the first place, I think it's still a better model because for me, like if I compare Bitcoin and Ethereum, I would say that the risks are very different. I would say that my conclusion is the following. The risk on Bitcoin is mostly on the tech front, like becoming obsolete and not fixing the stuff that we know have to be fixed, which are security budget, privacy, quantum resistance, mostly. And on Ethereum side, I would consider the risk being more on the social layer, like diluting too much the values and not having a sufficient number of people that will understand them and protect them over time. So you have some dilution, and then you just accumulate the compromises, as we said before. And then less and less people will call out the compromises and so on, and we will just end up recreating the system that we wanted to fight in the first place. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually talk about this a lot, that if we don't decentralize and we don't use the tools the way that we're supposed to in a non-custodial way, and actually run the software ourselves to the extent that we can,
yes,
we're not really replacing anything. We're just replicating or slowly building a PayPal.
Yeah. It's just fiat with extra steps, and then we are just like, yeah, I agree with you. It's very important. We need to use it the proper way to educate people. But again, this is something that I really like in Bitcoin. Because those past 2 years, I was more and more attending to Bitcoin events and so on, even like small meetups. And that was something that was striking to me when I compared to Ethereum. I always attended like Ethereum events and conferences, but they were always focused on the technical aspect. And it was striking to me to see that in those Bitcoin meetups, especially the small ones, there are some technical talks, but way less than ideological talks and talking about economy and about why we are doing that in the first place. And then, because for me, it's obvious in the beginning why I believe in that, but I forgot that we are still a bubble and it's not something that the mass adoption can easily understand. So when I was going to Ethereum conferences, not seeing the talks about that, it was fine for me because I was already believing in that cypherpunk's vision and so on. But then I realized that the new people that came to those events, they don't care and they don't understand those things. And so if you talk only about tech, they're missing the point, actually. And then they cannot make the difference between Ethereum or Solana or anything that is cool on paper on the technical front, but that is clearly not a credible attempt to build an unstoppable system. And then in those Bitcoin events, and especially the small ones, I saw people really focusing on why we are doing that. And it was very cool to me, like talking to people very far from the tech side, like people working in different industries, like old people, young people, and with a very strong focus on why we are doing that, why money is broken right now, the consequences of having a broken fiat system and this kind of stuff. And I think it is very important to build a very strong and resilient social layer. And this is the only way, in my opinion, that we can make it and fight against the governments and nation states. Yeah.
Yeah, there was actually someone in the chat who rage quit within 10 minutes. He said in the beginning that this is intellectual retardation.
Okay.
And that he's a toxic Bitcoin maximalism. And then he said, what is the social layer? Too much your talk. It's a pity that all this wasted intellectual energy, that we're wasting all of this intellectual energy. I'm out till next time. Really funny.
Yeah.
He doesn't get the point.
Yeah. Do you have the handle of this person? Because the tone and messaging points remind me of someone, Ethereum Maxi, that is oftentimes commenting my tweets about Bitcoin and the fact that I'm criticizing Ethereum sometimes. Okay, anyway, it does not matter, but it's funny. Yeah, missing the point completely. All those people are missing the point. They are. I do believe that many people that believe in Ethereum actually believe in the cypherpunk vision and so on. But I was blind to the fact that many of them want Bitcoin to fail and die. And this is something I never understood. And I think I was blind to this. And some Bitcoiners told me that in the past, many years ago, and I did not want to believe it because for me, it was absolutely obvious that if you are working on Ethereum, and if you came on Ethereum because you believe in decentralization, cypherpunk values, and so on, there is no way you can be anti-Bitcoin. At the maximum, you can want both to succeed, but I never considered that it would be even possible to think about a world where only Ethereum would succeed and Bitcoin would fail. It was impossible for me to comprehend this. And recently, when I shifted to become more Bitcoin maxi, I saw those people on the Ethereum side coming to me and I debated with them, discussed with them, and I realized that actually many of them want Bitcoin to fail. And it was very weird to me. I really cannot understand that. I can understand the other way around because objectively, Ethereum did some compromises, even if it has cypherpunk rules and so on, it did some compromises. And then depending on where you place your acceptance level on some criteria, you can accept or not accept them. So that I can understand that Bitcoiner consider Ethereum as something that is not a credible attempt and so on, or that is distracting too much and so on. But the other way around, I cannot comprehend it. Or also, I saw again some FUD on the proof of work itself and so on. I thought it was like 2015 FUD era, and that we were past this, but no, still some people are anti-proof of work on Ethereum world, and this is very weird. Like for me, I never considered proof of stake as good because of the environmental impact of proof of work. Never. I never bought into this bullshit. The only reason why I tolerated the proof of stake of Ethereum, and I'm saying tolerate because I'm not like huge fan of it. Like I tolerate it for 3 reasons, I would say. First of all, it had 6 years of distribution through proof of work. It did not start straight with proof of stake, which would have been very bad. The second one is that it's designed to be extremely resilient and decentralized and so on, which is very good, unlike all the other proof of stake systems. And the third one is that it's not coupled with governance. It would be catastrophic if, in addition to staking and having some economic power, you would also have some governance power on the protocol. If it was the case, it would be like dramatic for Ethereum, and I will never accept it. So for those three reasons, I tolerated it, but I always like felt that the beauty of the proof of work is insane, and the fact that you have an external entropy that secures the network and that is connected to the real world with the physics connection in a way, and energy connection is very good. I think it was the real revolution, to be honest. So I never like bought into like this thought against proof of work. And then, there were technical reasons to potentially migrate to proof of stake, mostly if you want to build a rollup centric Ethereum, because proof of stake has finality, for example. This is the kind of details that are good for a rollup, and this will be challenging for rollups on Bitcoin. So it's clear that it has some advantages for sure. But yeah, for me, like proof of work was the real revolution.
Usually I think about the fact that proof of work is what makes Bitcoin not a Ponzi. Because if you think about it, anyone can basically put their excess electricity to work and try their shot to get a reward.
Yeah.
The fact that we have this distribution of the monetary supply means that there is no central issuer. And this is basically the decentralization element in Bitcoin, outside of how many people run nodes, because those don't really matter.
I mean, I will not say they don't matter, but I definitely see where you are coming from. I agree with you on the distribution. It's very like pure and fair, and I agree on that.
At the same time, fair is not supposed to mean equal or egalitarian.
Yeah, no, like, not at all. Yeah,
it's for those who can afford it, and it always has been. You can argue, but in 2010 I could mine with my laptop. Well, why didn't you?
Yeah.
It was only for those who had the information at the time, and then smart people figured out how to use their GPUs, and you could also complain at the time, well, I can't afford to buy GPUs to mine.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true.
It is competitive, it is fair, but it's not equal.
Yeah. And it is not supposed to be. So it's fine that it is not equal, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, at one point Satoshi emailed Laszlo, I think this was in 2010, and said, I don't know, man, I'm not some kind of socialist, but can you please turn off your GPUs so that new users can mine with their CPU? He was an idealist who really wanted new users to feel, I guess, the gratification of receiving coins after they turn on their wallet.
Yeah.
And of course, it was not gonna happen long term. Satoshi also witnessed the creation of Slush Pool, which was the first mining pool back in 2010 or 2011, around, I guess, 1 month before he left, Slush Pool was launched.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff has happened where Satoshi was proven to either be wrong or too idealistic. Even the privacy of Bitcoin, which is chapter 10 in the white paper.
Yeah. So, and I know you are very much into privacy, right? I think that this is probably your biggest problem with Bitcoin right now, right? The fact that it lacks privacy and that there is no real work to fix that. Would you consider it to be like your number one problem with Bitcoin right now, or the number one thing that you would want to see fixed on Bitcoin?
Yes, but at the same time, privacy also needs scale.
Yeah.
And it needs to be somewhat affordable, because we do have coin joins, we do have pay joins, and we have all of these techniques that, if used in combination, then they can give you not privacy, but a degree of anonymity, meaning that nobody watching the blockchain will have certainty about who you are, but they will still see what amount is being sent, where it comes from, and where it comes from is a coin join, and where it goes is a new address. And just because there is no information at the time of the transaction doesn't mean that later there cannot be more information about what happened. someone's gonna join some KYC exchange, and then you can backtrack
exactly
to see what happened there.
Yeah, but I agree with you that it has to be scalable and accessible, affordable. I agree with you. Like you cannot have like real privacy if it's not accessible to everyone, to the masses, and be affordable. So, but it's it's a good level of practical privacy in a way. In the meantime, so you would still consider that scaling is the #1 priority, maybe.
Yeah, I agree because it's also an existential threat to Bitcoin. The fact that you can have nation-state actors KYCing the whole chain. You already see this with Ocean, who are softly pushing for a world where regulators will say this is what you can have in Bitcoin blocks and this is what you cannot, because they're super compliant in the way that they're approaching this, and they're even worse than, I guess, legislators and nation states in this regard. But I think this needs to be a topic of its own where we talk about filters and what's happening with Ocean. I need to plug a couple of ads and then we can come back to the topic of privacy or your journey from Ethereum to Bitcoin, which I think is not finished. But let me mention the sponsor that tries to enable, actually there are two of them that can enable privacy on Bitcoin. The first one is Layer2 Labs. They have this Z-Side, which is a Zcash fork as a sidechain on Bitcoin. You can check out the software at layer2labs.com/download. They also have fun memes on their Twitter page. Yesterday, they posted a reading of the Twitter exchange between Pierre Rochard and Luke Dash Jr., read by two Brazilian models. And that's super funny. I recommend you to watch that. And basically what drive chains are two-way pegged sidechains which are enforced by miners. And basically, they would enable the kind of sidechains that were promised about a decade ago, with the ability to not just scale, but also have the features from all the interesting altcoins. There's also an Ethereum sidechain. There's something that's shaped, I guess, from Namecoin. And there's also a prunable big block sidechain, which is called Thunder, which is sort of a joke about lightning. But anyway, check out Layer2 Labs. And also there's Citrea, which is responsible for building the first optimistically verified ZK rollup on Bitcoin. They also, basically what they try to do is bring Ethereum features to a ZK rollup on Bitcoin, which inherits the security of the base layer. And they're gonna launch later this year, as far as I know. And they're gonna be using BitVM2. And what else is interesting? They're gonna have all of these services which are available on Ethereum on stuff like Aave, which means you're gonna be able to borrow stablecoins against your Bitcoin and other stuff. Basically, I think Citrea got a lot of unfair criticism because the core developers said, well, if services like Citrea want to use inscriptions for their ZK proofs, which they will be putting on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's better for them to use upReturn because it doesn't bloat the UTXO set. And they said, how about we just drop the upReturn limit because, you know, people can just go to the miners nowadays. There is the Marathon mining service. I think it's called Upstream or something like this. I'm not sure. I gotta look it up. But that one can let people add stuff to a Bitcoin block without actually going into the mempool.
Slipstream, no?
Slipstream, yeah. You can bypass the whole Bitcoin network process just by going to a mining pool, which has a decent hash rate, has a good chance to mine the block within a day. And you
Peter Todd used it to upload a bunch of malware and viruses to Bitcoin blockchain recently. Like he did that with 100 kilobytes of data.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, check out Citrea at Citrea, Citrea.xyz, and watch out for the launch later this year, which is gonna happen whether you like it or not, because they figured out how to do it without covenants. And I guess there's some stuff to unpack here, right? Because
yes, a lot actually. I'm very fan of Citrea, by the way. This is their merch. This is from Citrea merch. I got it from Istanbul last week in Bitcoin++ scaling edition. they are very good also for merge, not only to build good BitVM bridges and ZK rollups. Yeah, big fan of Citrea. I like them, and it's true that I think they received very unfair treatment from a lot of, not a lot, I don't know if it's a lot, but from some people in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and they were like associated to this filter spam drama with some weird conspiracy theories also as well. The fact that they paid some core developers to push this, which is completely not true. And they did not even say we want that. They said, okay, if we had this possibility, we will do it, or we will do it, but we don't ask for anything. As you said, it's a good way to say it. They will do a launch anyway, like it's permissionless. They have a way to do that. They just mentioned that if they had this, they will use it, and also it's not for the happy pass. It's like for like edge case, so it's not for the happy pass. So in theory, this is not something that we will maybe ever see used ever. So it was crazy to see like how this was used in this filter drama, and it's I mean, maybe it's good for their awareness and mindshare, because now a lot of people are talking about Citrea. Some people say that there is no bad publicity, you know, but yeah, I think it was unfair treatment, and it's a bit sad to see like when you have people that are trying to innovate and push what can be done on Bitcoin, and I do believe they have the genuine vision. You know, they are not like, they have good intentions. You know, they want to help for the hyper Bitcoinization of the world and so on. So I really respect them for that, and the fact that they keep pushing despite the lack of support and the people that are trashing on them. We also face the same kind of stuff, so I also have a lot of empathy for them because we are in the same position, and I'm discussing with them regularly, and I believe we have the same mission and the same vision, and we all want the same thing. And it's a bit sad that some people don't see it like that, but anyway, both them and us, we will continue pushing, and others as well, like Alpen and other teams. So yeah.
Also said this to the Citrea people that, of course, they got all of this negative publicity, but right now they're sort of like the Xerox of ZK rollups, because everyone else who's gonna come along and launch, they're gonna be labeled as, oh, just another Citrea service.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I feel sorry for the Alpen guys. Like, no offense, guys. You worked so hard on this, and I think right now they decided to delay their launch because
garbled circuits,
garbled circuits by Liam Egan.
Yes.
They're really brilliant, but I think that Citrea is gonna win this race specifically because they're gonna be the first ones to launch, and everyone will know their name.
Yeah. I discussed that exactly with them, both of them actually, and I tend to agree with you, to be honest. Like, I was a bit surprised in a way to see that Alpen Labs was pushing most of their efforts into like Glock or BitVM3, which is also interesting that they don't name it explicitly BitVM3, where Robin Linus is calling this BitVM3 family. It's interesting, but yeah, overall I think like it's very pragmatic to launch with BTM2 and then like see how to upgrade, because even Citrea agrees that garbled circuits are the future of BitVM bridges. They're not saying no, it's not good, but first of all, they want to. They just did the audit. The audit was complete for BTM2, so it's a lot of money and time for the audit. So it will be a bit waste of time and money to just throw it. And I think they want to also check the demand and the trust and so on for BitVM bridges, because literally we still don't know. Like, this is a missing factor that we don't know, because on paper BitVM is amazing. It's way better than the status quo in terms of trust assumptions and so on, but we don't know yet if people will have trust and put some money bridge to BitVM bridges and so on. So it's also good to have like a team that will just ship and go to mainnet, and it will be an interesting signal to see if people actually want more trust minimized ways to have more programmability on Bitcoin. So it will be an interesting signal, and for us as well, we are waiting that, because it's also a good signal, a good input that we are missing right now in terms of how much we prioritize this internally, like going live with the BitVM bridge for Starknet and so on. So first of all, we have the same vision, and we want them to succeed because it's good for hyper Bitcoinization and so on. But also, it would be a good input for us about the demand for this kind of solutions. Because again, yeah, they are much better on paper and everything, but they are not battle tested. There are new constructions still and so on. So we still don't know how much people will put trust in those systems. So it will be interesting to see both the reaction about the fact that they will spam blocks with data, and also the market signal in terms of how many people will want to put some money into those bridges.
Yeah, for me it's interesting because this whole situation with Citrea and Alpen reminds me of video games in the late 90s when you had all of these game engines that were launching, and there was one that was supposed to be very good and it got delayed multiple years because it tried to switch to the next video graphics engine. It started out with, I think it was the Quake 1 engine, and then Quake 2 came along and they said, well, we want to do it with the Quake 2. And then Unreal Engine came out and they said, yeah, we want to use Unreal. And I think they delivered the game in 2011 or something. It was called Duke Nukem Forever. And the joke was that, first of all, they said it's going to take as long as it takes to launch. But by the time it came out, they had the latest graphics, but the mechanics of the video game were dated. Because they built on that foundation and they just replaced the graphics and the physics. But the concept, like the design, was not modern anymore. And it sort of suffered because of this. I don't think it applies to ZK rollups. But there's something to be learned here, because sometimes when you're first to market and you launch something, you can still improve it. It's not like it's the end of the world and what you launch is gonna ossify.
I agree with you, but I do think we have an example in the Ethereum landscape with rollups in general, not just ZK rollups. The fact that optimistic rollups launched before, and sadly without even fraud proofs, which is insane to me. Like, it's completely insane. That not only they were inferior, but they did not even ship the core engine of their security, which is insane. But if you take the reality now, it's insane, because literally everyone knows that the key rollups are way better on every level. But yet, if you take on none of the ZK rollup is even in the top 3 most successful layer 2s on Ethereum, sadly. So it's insane when you think about it. I do want to hope that the Bitcoin ecosystem will do better on that front and will be more meritocratic and reward more the solutions that are like really into building long-term vision and security with strong security and whatnot. But let's see. The market, unfortunately, is not always rational and rewarding the players that are playing the fair game in a way. So yeah, I do think that we have an example of this sad reality on Ethereum landscape. The fact that even today, like, despite the fact that everyone knows that ZK rollups are better, the most successful ones are like Base and Arbitrum, and all of them are optimistic rollups. So let's see if it will be better and different on Bitcoin.
And I'm super excited about all of this that's happening. But at the same time, I see what's happening on the other side with people running Bitcoin knots and saying, we don't want the shitcoiners to build on Bitcoin. We don't want this. Like, I can see a lot of social opposition, which on one hand is going to trigger the other side, and they will say, okay, I'm going to try Citrea just to spite you, to make fun of you. Just like right now they're saying they're going to run Bitcoin Core V30 just because they want to make the knots people feel angry. But it's sort of sad that there's I remember how it was with the Lightning Network, right? There was consensus that this is exciting and that this is very ahead of its time, and it's the advanced technology that Bitcoin is gonna get. Everyone agreed that it's the way to scale and it's the way forward. And there was an allocation of resources that really supported the Lightning Network to take off. And it had many issues and quirks and mishaps, and even today, even if it's more usable than it was 8 years ago, it's still not what it promised to be.
Yeah, that's right.
But with ZK rollups, we have examples on Ethereum. I mean, we can do some testing today. There's also the Citrea testnet that people can try. It's not like they come out of nowhere. It's just
Yeah,
that
that's true.
there isn't enough support for them. Not the same
Exactly.
amount, not of the same kind. I see a lot of marketing budget being deployed. The fact that there's an advertisement on my podcast is proof of it. But the question is, will the users actually use Citrea?
Yeah.
Or will the
Yeah.
Ethereum users decide to move away from WBTC, which is custodied by BitGo and also wrapped as a token, and it's lesser secure than a ZK rollup on Bitcoin? But do they care? That's the other question. Because
It's a big
we can
question.
complain all day about the lack of security of that, but people still use it. There's 100,000 Bitcoin on it. And
Yeah.
will we see any migration towards
Yeah.
ZK rollups?
It's a good question. I do hope that the people on Ethereum at least will care, and they will want like better flavor of wrapped Bitcoin that are cost minimized. But for example, like on Sui or Solana, I believe they don't care at all. So, but I do hope that on Ethereum side, maybe some people will care. And I agree with you also that we have examples of DK rollups functioning in production, for example, Starknet and the ZK tech itself. Like it's not only theory. Like our production proving system is running in production for more than 4 years. It has secured like nearly $2 trillion of cumulative volume, processed more than 500 million transactions. So it's practical stuff like that are proven in production. So I agree, it's a big difference. It's not something just on paper. And by the way, coming back to the value of Ethereum with respect to Bitcoin, I do believe that that in its own justifies kind of the existence of Ethereum as a testnet for Bitcoin in a way, and all those learnings. And because the reality, like let's be honest, like ZK, the ZK space without Ethereum will not be the same. ZK space will not be the same without Ethereum right now. It accelerated so much the whole ZK industry over the past 5 years. It's insane. All the funding that went into research and so on, because there was finally a practical application and incentives to actually push it forward. So just that is very good for Bitcoin, I believe that. So even like if you want to consider just Ethereum as a testnet for Bitcoin, I think it still has some value, where it's a sandbox and you can experiment and do stuff, and then you can take the learnings and apply the good ones to Bitcoin and just leave the rest. So I think that some Bitcoiners should embrace it more like that, even if they consider Ethereum itself as something credible. But at least what is happening can be good learning on the mistakes and stuff like that. And now we are really at the time where Bitcoin maybe has the possibility to leapfrog completely, because Ethereum for the first years really tried to do everything on the layer one, and then realized that it was not possible, and then decided to shift to rollup centric roadmap and say, okay, we will maximize security and decentralization on the layer one, censorship resistant as well, and for scaling and expressivity and whatnot, we will use layer twos. And it really optimized for that. But now if you think about it, like Bitcoin can really leapfrog and go directly from like a rock solid store of value to actually P2P cash by embracing like layer twos and also privacy at the same time. So I think we are really at a turning point for Bitcoin. And right now, the filter drama is a bit connected to this discussion because, some people try to oppose and say, okay, it's either Bitcoin as money or as arbitrary data or file storage plays. But I think there is something in between, which is, okay, something that will enable rollups or layer two constructions to settle on Bitcoin efficiently, which will improve Bitcoin as programmable P2P money in a self-custodial manner and so on. So I think this debate is also interesting on that front, because it became a question on the existential nature of Bitcoin and so on. And for me, and I believe you are in the same position, I do believe that if Bitcoin is only a store of value, it has failed. It has to be P2P cash, otherwise it has failed, in my opinion. So, and I do believe that there is an opportunity to leapfrog completely and take all those innovations, research, and production grade solutions that exist today on Ethereum, take them and try to see what can be applicable to Bitcoin. Yeah.
At the same time, you sort of simplified the journey that Ethereum underwent to get to rollups, because I do remember there was Plasma,
Yeah,
there
yeah, true.
was the Raiden network, which, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken, was shaped after the Lightning network.
yeah,
And there were
yeah, yeah,
lots of other attempts to build L2s. And
yeah.
at
That's
one
true.
point, there was like more than a dozen L2s that emerged at the same time. It was madness, and it was very difficult to understand which one is really going to succeed.
Yeah,
Some people, there was this Sasal or something. There was, oh no, Chris Black.
mm.
There was this guy who was all the time, I don't think he's on Twitter anymore, but he was criticizing these L2s on Ethereum as being just multi-sigs with master keys
Yeah,
that can receive changes anytime.
yeah,
So rollups, I think, were an evolution that took a long time. You are right
yeah, yeah, that's
about
true.
Ethereum funding ZK research, because I read some articles from back in 2014 or something when. So initially, the ZK stuff was proposed for Bitcoin. Satoshi mentioned it in 2010 that
Yeah,
it could be used to write a more efficient version of Bitcoin. Then in 2013, there were two influential papers. The first one was called Zero Coin, and the second was Zero Cash. It was a bunch of academics who wanted to build this system on top of Bitcoin. The main issue was that it required a trusted setup, and the core
yeah,
developers were against it. So we saw the emergence of two altcoins that basically developed zero knowledge proofs for this purpose. It was Zcoin that launched first, and then a week later it was Zcash. And from this point on, I think Ethereum was much more supportive and saw the potential in integrating this technology into their own stack. And I
mm,
think the purpose was not necessarily privacy, but to make data more scalable,
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
compress as much information into the ZK rollups and have more efficiency for the data on Ethereum, because it just bloats. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah, 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 I agree. Like on Ethereum, the ZK aspect was used mostly for the scaling aspect and not for the privacy. Only Aztec is into the privacy aspect from the beginning. But yeah, at some point, we'll all hopefully work on privacy. Like again, even for us right now, we are not putting a hardcore focus on privacy, unfortunately, because lack of demand, in a way, that's the issue. But you can maybe argue that it's chicken and egg problem. Maybe you need to build the infra first. But we are doing some work on the privacy aspect. Right now, even if we don't have privacy on Starknet protocol, we can have it on the app layer, because Starknet is very cheap to verify zero knowledge proofs in general, even from other ecosystems. For example, I mentioned Aztec, and they have their own stack for building private applications using their language that is Noir. And what you can do is you can write an application with Noir, generate a proof with their system, and verify it on Starknet. So that's one way to do that. And we have other people that are building right now confidential transfers directly using a verification of zero knowledge proofs in Starknet directly. So we do care about privacy, but to put it more into the protocol level, which is a huge work, right now we don't prioritize it. But ultimately, I believe that there is no full sovereignty and freedom without privacy. So for me, it's inevitable. You need privacy if you want to have sovereignty and freedom. And without that, as you said earlier, you always have some risk, and it's a big risk of capture, and we need to be careful about that. Yeah.
I also got to plug two more sponsors, and then we can move on and talk about Starkware. You hinted to it a few times. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's also a layer where, even if you said that you don't prioritize privacy, you can build something like Tornado Cash, just
Yes.
fork it and add it on top
Exactly.
of this
Yeah.
layer. And I think it's also useful to talk about Upcat and other stuff that could have been useful. And then Collider Script, which was published, I think, last year in November,
Yeah.
and it was sort of a game changer. So I'm just outlining some topics that we can pursue. But before that, let me present the sponsors. Sideshift is the place where you can swap something that you have for something that you want. For example, if someone wants to pay you in stable coins and we are in the middle of a bull market and it might be a bad idea, not financial advice, but it's definitely not great to hold on to stable coins during a bull market. You can basically send the person who wants to pay you in stable coins a USDT address and then put your Bitcoin address to the receiver. And boom, you're just gonna receive BTC to your wallet without ever having to deal with the stable coins, without having to set up a Tron wallet or whatever. The fees are pretty low, the liquidity is good. Unfortunately, it's not available in the US the normal way, wink wink. And what else? It's Sideshift.ai, they have a lot of pairs. They used to have Lightning also, but they dropped it. I think they were the first exchange to accept Lightning and also one of the first major ones to drop it, give up on it, but they still have Liquid if you're into that. And I think also Rootstock is there. It's pretty cool, check it out. And there's also Bitcoin.com news, which I think has gotten so good over the last few years. It used to be known, and a lot of people remember it as the website that says Bitcoin is slow, use Bitcoin Cash. Now they rebranded. If you go to their webpage, you'll see that the Bitcoin logo is not green anymore, it's orange. And they also have pretty good news coverage. Like, for example, let's run this experiment right now. Let's see how many times they mention ZK rollups or even Starkware in their articles. I think it's a lot more times than you see on Bitcoin Magazine, which focuses more on toxic maximalist narratives. So let's write Starkware in the search box. They don't have Starknet. Yeah, they do have some articles about Starknet and the Cairo verifier. And yeah, I think it's a much more diverse news source, which also covers news about gold, news about oil and other markets which might be related or interesting. And they also cover other parts of the world about which you don't hear very often, like Russia or India, China, and even Africa. So check it out. I think they do pretty good journalism. And I would not promote this if I didn't also check them regularly to find some news that I don't find in other parts. And last but not least, there is noons.com, which is a peer-to-peer exchange. Very much in the spirit of Paxful, if you remember that one. Except that Paxful was VC funded. It sort of had a US headquarters, and the co-founder of Paxful, Ray Youssef, decided he doesn't want to deal with any of that. Right now he's focusing on empowering the global south. He calls these people his lions and works with people from Africa and people from the Middle East and from South America. And the purpose is to get coins into their hands and enable them to have parallel economies. Basically, if you register to Noons and you start trading there, whether it's peer-to-peer or spot, or even if you go this route and use their debit card for spending your Bitcoin or whatever, you are giving liquidity to the global south. And these people will hustle their way into selling the coins and establishing markets, onboarding more people. And it's all being done in a non-custodial way, which is a lot of fun and it's exciting. So check out noons.com, which is NOONES.com, which ironically has 8-bit graphics, just like the NES. Okay, Abdel. So which topic should we talk about first? Let's talk about Starkware, what it is, and what ZK Starks are.
Yeah, sure. So Starkware is a company, basically the co-founder and CEO of Starkware now, Eli Ben-Sasson, is the inventor of ZK Starks. And as you mentioned earlier, the year 2013, actually Eli Ben-Sasson gave a very interesting talk in Bitcoin San Jose conference in 2013, where he was talking about ways maybe to leverage ZK for Bitcoin at that time. And it was before the creation of Starks. So the creation of Starks, the paper was released in 2018. And yeah, so these Starks are a new family of zero-knowledge proofs that improves and brought a lot of interesting properties over the previous state of the art, which was Snarks. You mentioned one of them. That was one of the reasons why the Bitcoin community rejected them, which was the need of a trusted setup for Snarks. So Starks, the T is for transparent, which means that there is no need for a trusted setup, which is very good. So that we did not explain it, but the trusted setup is basically a ceremony that you do once, and there is this idea of you need to have usually one honest participant that will destroy the cryptographic waste. It is how it's called. And if one person does it honestly, then the system is then secure. And Starks were very good on that front because they don't require a trusted setup. So that was one of the main advantage. Another one is that they are using very simple cryptographic assumptions, like hash-based, basically, which is very good for quantum resistance. So that was another very good advantage of Starks. They are not using like complex cryptography, like elliptic curve pairing cryptography and this kind of stuff. And then also they have very good properties in terms of scaling, because Snarks are mostly used for the succinctness of the proofs, like how small they are, but Starks are very good in terms of their scaling properties. The magical property of Starks is that it is exponentially faster to verify the proof as opposed to re-execute the original computation, which means that the more computation you aggregate into one proof, the more interesting it becomes, which is like unusual in the system. Like it means that the more activity you have, the more compression and performance gain you get from the proof in terms of like both the throughput, but also the cost and so on. So they are very good for that. They're amazing. So Starkware invented those Stark proofs. And it's interesting also to see how they were received in the Ethereum community in the first place. I would say that originally, like the research on ZK on Ethereum was very into Snarks, and they did not immediately embrace Starks, and many people were very skeptical about them and saying, no, they will not work and so on. This is not the way. And Starkware was really believing that it would be the way. And I think that 7 years later, we can confidently say that they became literally the state of the art now. Everyone is using Starks now. Even like all our competitors on Ethereum that were using Snarks before, now they are all using Starks. And most of them are, at the end of the day, wrapping a Stark in the Snark just to send a smaller proof on chain on Ethereum, but they are using Stark as their main proving infrastructure. So it's one of the examples where, and this is something that I love with Starkware, this a bit like a mix between visionary and trailblazing, like exploring uncharted territories and having a bold vision on something that they truly believe in. And it was the case for Starks. And then there were many other cases that came later with Validium and other stuff. But the main dominant example is Starks themselves that were very criticized and many people were skeptical. And then years later, they literally became state of the art. And then Starkware started to think about how to use them to build concrete, meaningful stuff. The original idea was to build like concrete applications, like perpetual exchange or this kind of stuff. Like DYDX was one of the first customer of Starkware, which was one of the biggest perp exchange back in the day. So it was built on StarkX, which is the ancestor of Starknet. It was not permissionless and it was not for arbitrary computation, so you could not deploy and write your own smart contracts and whatnot. And then came Starknet, which is a ZK rollup using Stark proofs. And right now, Starknet settles on Ethereum, and the goal is to expand and to have Starknet settle also on Bitcoin. So this proving infrastructure, as I mentioned before, has been battle tested in production. So it's interesting because we have the a shared proving infrastructure that is used not only for Starknet, but also StarkX. So we still have some StarkX customers that are using StarkX architecture. And we also have Starknet app chains, which are like basically the same stack as the public Starknet, but they run their own app chain. And we have this common shared proving infrastructure called Sharp. And the idea is that you can use it to basically aggregate any kind of jobs when you want to generate a stack proof. And again, because as I said earlier, it's more interesting to batch more and more computation. So you can also like batch computation from one ZK rollup, another one, some app chains, whatever, and you can generate some, aggregate the proofs and do a recursion. So it's battle tested infrastructure. And then, yeah, the goal now is to expand it to Bitcoin. For that, we cannot do it like completely as we have now on Ethereum. We are missing some pieces to do exactly the same on Bitcoin, mostly because we cannot verify efficiently stack proofs directly on chain on Bitcoin with Bitcoin script. So on Bitcoin, there is a small VM that is Bitcoin script, but it's very limited in comparison to Ethereum. So we cannot verify efficiently stack proofs. For that, we will need something. This something could be different things. You mentioned one of them, which is OpCat. There would be other ways to do that. But yeah, if we wanted to do exactly the same architecture, which is the ultimate one, as in the most trust minimized or trustless, because it's better than BitVM. And this is the end game because you don't even have the 1 out of n honest assumption. You need you need to trust no one, basically. You just trust the math and the mathematical proof, and then you verify it on chain. But in order to do that, you need to be able to verify the proof on chain directly. And this is how we can have the end game vision, which is trustless, it's fully fleshed ZK rollup. But for that, we will need the soft forks, and then there are multiple ways to have it. And we can go into more details into the possible approaches. But yeah, this is the goal for us. And in the meantime, while waiting for a soft fork that would enable this endgame vision, we will start with what is best to the best we can do today, which is BitVM bridge designs. It was not announced officially, but Eli shared a bit about it. We are doing collaboration with Untitled Labs to work together on the BitVM bridge design for Starknet and so on. Yeah, so as a pragmatic way to start expanding to Bitcoin, we will start with BitVM bridge. And at the same time, we will continue exploring if there would be other ways to do that, either without soft fork, like you mentioned Collider, and Collider VM is one such possibility, but we don't know yet if it could be practical or not. And at the same time, we are continuing to explore potential soft forks that will get us there, or at least get us closer. So either directly something that will enable verification of proofs directly, like OpCat, or something that get us closer, but like covenants, like CTV or CSFS, for example. They will not give us the end game, but it will be a step closer. Yeah, that's the summary of what Starkware is and Starknet and the current state. Yeah.
I remember when I interviewed Eli Ben Sasson last year. I think it was in May or something. And at the time, the prevalent narrative in Bitcoin was that OpCat was next in terms of soft forks. It was rewritten using TypeScript by Ethan Heil and another guy. I don't remember his name right now. But basically, it was proposed as a BIP, and it seemed to get a lot of attention. And it was also... It had two powerful narratives. The first one is that it was only a dozen lines of code. The second one was that it was created by Satoshi and disabled by Satoshi because of concerns that no longer exist.
Yes.
But there was such a negative campaign that was launched to target OpCat. Like, I think part of the blame is to be taken by the Taproot Wizards because they did a horrible job. And just for the record, what OpCat does is something you can do in Excel today. You put together two rows. One says ABC, the other one says 1, 2, 3. and then you run upcat and you get ABC123. That's exactly what it does. But builders can basically use this feature to put together a lot of interesting stuff. There's this famous saying that you can build anything with upcat, but it's not necessarily the most efficient way to build it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
so part of it is Taproot, and I guess the other part is us, right?
Taproot Wizards.
Yeah. No, but you said part of it is Taproot Wizard, so I was thinking that maybe there was another one to
No. I think you guys did pretty well, to be honest.
Okay.
Like,
no, I mean, it will be fair. I mean, it's fine if you think that it's okay. Maybe we did not like. I think like one, for example, controversial thing that we did maybe, but it's weird, is the fund that we did, like the $1 million fund for OpCat research. Like, and the goal was really like to make it like neutral, and even people that were against OpCat, it was an opportunity for them that OpCat would actually be harmful for Bitcoin and so on. But some people said no, it's not good, like to involve some fund for this and so on. I mean, yeah, I understand the criticism for Taproot Wizards as well. I mean, I really like Eric Wall and Reginald on the technical front. They are doing very good stuff, and I really like Eric Wall takes in general. But I agree, like maybe the extreme meme culture around it and a bit too provocative and a bit too like maybe it was harmful. This is something I discussed with Eric many times actually, and I do believe like maybe it was maybe not the right way to do it. But anyway, I agree with you that it had some momentum, and then the momentum dropped for some reason. Yeah, and now there seems to be like a start of a momentum about CTV and CSFS. But I think right now we have too much distraction with the filter war right now, unfortunately, and that's very sad because we should focus more on discussing what's next instead of discussing this distraction, I would say, at least. Yeah.
I think you did a pretty good summary of it. But I also want to add that a lot of non-technical Bitcoin users perceived upcat as something that's first of all related to the Taproot Wizards because they had the cat avatars, and they also perceived it as just technology that enables them to have decentralized exchanges for their JPEGs, so that they can swap their tokens, build markets for this. And this narrative was much more powerful than the good stuff, like the Starkware or even the other stuff that can be built with covenants.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we got to this point, but also recall Peter Todd, who is objectively someone who has the competence and the knowledge to look at code, saying that he doesn't want something built by Ellie, who was also behind Zcash, on Bitcoin. So he got lazy. Instead of actually looking at what this does, he appealed to his previous experiences and emotions or whatever, because Peter Todd was active and involved in the creation of Zcash during the ceremony. And then he had...
I did not know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Just a second, I want to show you something.
That's very interesting. Okay, that explains a lot. Okay, interesting.
It says here, non-electronic remains of compute node.
Okay.
It has the signature of Peter Todd all over. This is basically the laptop that he used during the ceremony. These are the discs, the DVDs that he wrote during the ceremony with the data. I have parts of the laptop. Obviously.
Why? How come do you have them?
I bought it from him.
Interesting. Okay, it's a piece of history.
At one point, he decided he wants to sell it because he's moving or whatever, and he has too much stuff. I bought this for like $1,000 from him in Bitcoin.
Okay, interesting.
And now I have a bunch of people who want to put this in a museum, and they're trying to make me offers to buy it.
That's
which
cool.
is funny.
Okay, interesting.
I've been holding on to this for 3 years, and I do agree that it belongs in a museum. Like, I'm just a nerd in his bedroom. Maybe I don't offer the best way for this to be presented to the world. Maybe some people will be interested in cypherpunk history or whatever. If Zcash becomes more successful than this, it's also gonna be more valuable. So I'm just holding on to it. It's a very nice memory. But my point is that even someone who is technically competent and can verify the code is using the same kind of FUD tactics. Like, oh, I don't like this guy, and if I don't like this guy, it means that everything that he builds is bad or whatever.
Yeah, as we said earlier, we discussed the people who push the change instead of discussing the change itself. So I agree, it's sad. And yeah, it's true that it was tainted too much with DGen use cases. But for me, like when I was discussing with Bitcoiners about the benefits, I was always using the angle of improving Bitcoin as money. Like even if you believe in the fix the money first, Opcat is good for that. Again, as we said, like for scaling, for privacy, and this kind of stuff. But I agree, like most of the time, to be honest, when I opened the discussion with Bitcoiners, it was either, oh yeah, but those people, I don't like those people, or yeah, but it will bring DGen use cases that we don't want. Even if I was not at all discussing about those use cases, there was an extreme focus for many people about that instead of realizing the potential to improve Bitcoin as programmable money. So it's a bit sad indeed that the momentum was lost on that. Yeah, right now I'm trying to go maybe a bit more extreme and think about maybe do a proposal for an upstart verify opcode directly, like which would be the most extreme thing to do. I want to do it maybe mostly as a thought experiment because it's challenging. So I don't know. I'm still considering whether or not I should go into this rabbit hole because it will likely be controversial, but I think it can be interesting to think about. Oh, because yeah, I had also some interesting discussions that were more constructive about Opcat. Yeah, Salvatore is pushing a lot of stuff, like he's behind the Swiss Army knife proposal, which is a set of 4 opcodes for Bitcoin. And he made very good arguments about why pushing Opcat alone was a bad idea, and that we should not do that. He said that it also pushed away some open-minded technical Bitcoiners that realized the potential of Opcat. But as you said before, something interesting, you can do it, but not in the most efficient manner or in the most elegant way. So it means that yes, some people understand that it can bring everything, almost everything, but in a way that is ugly and that they don't want that. So he was trying to explain me that pushing Opcat alone is a bad idea. I think Alex, working on Arcade right now, also has some similar arguments about the mistake that maybe we did about thinking that the smallest change would be the most viable path, and he was trying to argue that maybe not actually, because maybe it's the 9 lines of code, but if it enables stuff in a very ugly manner, maybe this is something that we don't want. I think there is also maybe some PTSD about Taproot and the hack that was found to do inscriptions and ordinals and this kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, TLDR, some people say that maybe it's not time to think about just the smallest change, but the change that makes the most sense. So if there will be something that will be not only Opcat, but Opcat plus some other stuff. So one example is the Swiss Army knife, which is Opcat, OpCTV, OpCheck contract verify, and OpAmount, which will be an opcode to be able to introspect the amount of the UTXO. Then maybe it's better because then you can build stuff, but in a more elegant manner and more efficient. So it's an interesting dilemma. And then the most hardcore path would be to enshrine native ZK verification in Bitcoin directly, which would be the most efficient, more specific. So you eliminate all arguments about enabling stuff that you don't want because it would have a single purpose of verifying the proof. But it comes with a lot of challenges because you need to enshrine one specific flavor of Stark protocol and whatnot. So there is concerns about credible neutrality and whatnot. But I think it's very interesting to maybe start discussing about that, to evaluate better all the potential alternatives that we have, the most generic flexible ones that are the less efficient, the most ugly ones, and at the extreme other part of the spectrum, something extremely specific. And in between, there might be some other things to do that get us to the end game vision of being able to, like build the trustless CK rollups on Bitcoin that will bring like massive scale and throughput and privacy and everything. Like in good UX also. One aspect that is overlooked, I think, is how much it can improve UX in a self-custodial manner. And we prove it like on Starknet today. It's not just theoretical stuff. On Starknet, you have something called account abstraction, and this is very powerful because you can be very flexible in the way you authenticate with the blockchain, in the way you spend your money. It can be anything. It could be like something like you authenticate with your Face ID, so completely seedless, no passphrase, nothing like that. You can have social recovery wallets. For example, if you have someone in your family that is like not too tech savvy and cannot manage properly seed phrase and so on, you could have way to unblock this person maybe with some guardians or this kind of stuff. So you can also improve the UX, but still with self-custody. So not only it improves and you can do more, but you can also improve like UX and scaling and costs and everything. Yeah.
Someone in the chat, his name is Odin Free, says, "Say Starknet, brother Abdel."
It's one of my colleagues from Starkware. He's funny. Okay, hi Odin, Starknet brother. I said it now. Yeah, okay. It's a meme in the Starknet community. So yeah, Odin is my colleague. He's great. It's interesting because we are working in the same team, and I am the Bitcoin maxi. He's the Ethereum maxi, kind of like, and we play about that. We fight each other internally and externally. Yeah.
On the topic that you mentioned, which regards the simplest change or the one with, I guess, the least impact versus the one that enables the most stuff to get built, I do remember after Opcat was proposed last year and it seemed to be a serious conversation, we did have during a BTC event this great script restoration idea, which basically packaged together all of these opcodes that builders need to add stuff to Bitcoin. And they said, how about we just maybe if I say optimistically propose, it will be confused with optimistically verified. But we just have this optimistic approach to pushing soft forks, and we enable everything that people need in order to build on Bitcoin. That never went anywhere. It was just one dose of hopium that people inhaled during that event, and then when it went to Twitter, it just was forgotten, I guess.
Yeah,
very fast.
It's a good point I forgot to mention, but GSR is definitely something that we would love seeing in Bitcoin because it will enable everything we need, even more, like much more efficient than Opcat alone, because it also has opmul multiply, which is also very important for us. And also, I think Rusty Russell did an amazing job into thinking about the pricing of those opcodes and so on with the VAROPS budget, the concept of dynamically pricing opcodes, and he did a lot of work and to benchmark the opcodes in different scenarios, trying to price the worst case scenario and stuff like that, to categorize the opcodes depending on their complexity and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree that it did not get traction sufficiently. But yeah, GSR would be one pass as well, yeah, for sure. And many people would love to see it because it would have pretty much everything we need to build fully fledged DK rollups on Bitcoin and more than that. Not only that, but also improve Bitcoin as a base layer as well. Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to have in the end or if we're going to have something, but even from Luke Dash Jr.'s side, I saw a tweet last week in which he said that Bitcoin is not a final project and we do need a ZK verifier.
Yeah. I was extremely surprised by that, and literally what I mentioned before, I discussed that with him actually, because I was extremely positively surprised that he said that. So the stuff I mentioned, like the obstacle verify, is something related to that. That's also we discussed it back in the day a long time ago, but we always thought that it would be like too specific and it would never be possible to push something like that. But after I saw that, I discussed more and realized that maybe it's interesting to at least open the idea, because at the very least, the positive aspect it can have is people will like be forced in a way to have a position about that, which will make them try to at least maybe educate themselves about ZK, what it can bring and what it can enable. So even if there is like extremely likely no chance to push something like that anytime soon, but the impact of that, like having people to think about it, to talk about it, to educate more about ZK for Bitcoin, maybe it's a good opportunity, like to spread more knowledge about ZK, demystify ZK on Bitcoin. This is also why I'm doing a lot of projects that are using Stark's proof on Bitcoin, but without soft fork, without anything like that. We are pushing a lot on that front, like using Starks today on Bitcoin, but not necessarily to verify proofs of chain. But there's so much you can do with Bitcoin, with Stark proofs for Bitcoin, and also for its symbiotic ecosystems like Nostr, Cashew. We are doing a lot of experiments on those. We'll be happy to mention a few of them if you want. But I realize that it's way easier to talk and educate about ZK if you don't talk about soft fork at all. So that's why also I realized that it's also very good to build stuff that don't require any soft fork, and you just show that Starks is a is a new paradigm shift. You know, it's like it doesn't have to be coupled to blockchain at all. It's just a new way to verify integrity of computation without re-executing. Like, you know, Bitcoin was a 0 to 1 in a way you can verify integrity of everything, but for that you need to re-execute everything. Stark's proofs is just a new way to do that without even re-executing it. I want people to understand that it's a new way to verify the integrity of a computation without executing it, which is extremely good because it removes the tension between accessibility of verifying and the scaling you want, because usually if you want to increase the throughput and so on, you will need to have bigger machines, hardware requirements, and so on. Because if you verify integrity by re-executing, it means that you need to be able to execute as fast as the blocks and transactions that are coming on the blockchain, which is why it's capped on Bitcoin, because you don't want to hurt the decentralization of the network by forcing the nodes to use big machines and so on. This will be catastrophic for the decentralization of the network. And I want Bitcoiners to understand that with this magical construction, you can verify the integrity of computation, but you can do that on a very small device, with a phone, with a Raspberry Pi, with a toaster, maybe even. So yeah, this is something I want Bitcoiners to understand, that it doesn't have to be even correlated to blockchain at all. It's just a new way of verifying integrity of computation.
Yeah, I very much agree with you, but I remember I was at BTC Prague this year, and I spoke with a guy who was working on the Spectre hardware wallet, which honestly is really good.
Okay.
And at one point, he was mocking me a bit. He was saying, "Oh, I hear you're into shitcoins nowadays," and I said, "Yeah, there's some really exciting stuff happening. Like, have you taken a look at Zcash recently?" And he said, "No." I asked him, "Do you know what zero knowledge proofs are?" And he answered, "No." And I offered, "Do you want me to explain to you how ZK proofs work?" And he said, "No, I have better stuff to do," and he left.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, it was very exciting because I found someone who knew nothing about it, and it was like my opportunity to practice my pitch, basically, because it's very hard to explain zero knowledge proofs.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I was just gonna try.
But he did not even give you the opportunity
No.
to even try. Yeah,
And I will not forget this.
Yeah, that's very sad.
This interaction, because on one hand, I was very much available to explaining. On the other hand, I was dealing not with some random pleb who brags about not being technical. It was someone who is working for a company in the industry.
Yeah, that's much worse than if it was a normal pleb. Yeah, you could understand it's very complex. But yeah, this guy, yeah, it's sad, to be honest. I agree with you. Yeah, I met actually one non-tech savvy pleb in BTC++ scaling edition. And it's funny because he's a Nazi, so he's in the Nodes camp. But he attended to my talk about stocks and Bitcoin, and then he was curious and he said, "Oh, now I want to understand more the nuances and how this works and so on." So there is hope. I agree that it is frustrating, but we need to try. So please continue to try to do that when you go to those conferences, even if you face people like that don't want to even understand what it is about and they are missing the point. But we need to keep trying, and we need more and more people to try that. It's important. Yeah.
I remember after that event, so at the same time, there were two events happening in Prague. There was BTC Prague, and there was also MoneroCon.
Mm-hmm.
And at BTC Prague, someone took a picture of Michael Saylor's slides, and it was about how much gains you're gonna have if you hold for a certain amount of years, like his predictions. And at the Monero event, there was, I forget his name. That's a shame. This older guy who's usually contributing to Monero project, Arctic Mine. That's his name also on Bitcoin Talk. You can find him in some threads. And he was presenting some algebra, basically. And someone put those together and said, this is the BTC Prague math, and this is the MoneroCon math. Like, it sort of degenerated to the point where in one side you talk about gains and you talk like Wall Street people.
Yeah.
And on the other side, there is actual cryptography talk and there's math talk, which is useful. Yeah. And on the topic of ZK proofs, the way in which I describe it usually is that it's like, so going from Bitcoin to using some sort of ZK to do basic stuff like verifying the blockchain in 1 second, to basically assume that everything is valid and you download that ZK proof and you don't have to sync the whole node.
Exactly.
It's like going from arithmetics, which is what Bitcoin is like today when you're running a node, to algebra, which has formulas. And of course, you have to be more knowledgeable to prove that the formulas work and that they're true. You have to run through some demonstrations. But once you have algebra, you can skip basically multiple additions and everything that is so basic in arithmetics, which of course works. Anyone can understand what's happening, but it's very intensive from a computation point of view. And with ZK proofs, you have more of algebra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a good way to frame it. I think some people like normal pleb will need a level even lower than this, but yeah, I think like for intermediate people, yeah, they can understand this analogy. I think it's a good one. And yeah, I agree with you. Like it's true. Like I was saying that I really like the Bitcoin events because we talk about why we are doing that. But this is very not what I was discussing about. Indeed, like the Michael Saylor gains and so on. This is something I really don't like in this new wave of Bitcoiners that are just simping MicroStrategy, Saylor, and ETFs. This is insane to me. They're like, yeah, this is completely insane. And then like those people that are like, for example, crashing on Ethereum, they are like just hypocrites. Like Ethereum conferences and so on, like they are much more closer to what you described for MoneroCon, at least. Despite the fact that it's only this and not also the why we do that, but for sure, like it's way better than just simping like those Michael Saylor and just buy my stocks and stuff like that. So it's very bad. And there is like, it seems to be like a big new wave of so-called Bitcoiners that are just like far from the cypherpunk ideals and so on, and this is very bad. Yeah.
But let me tell you something which I hope is not true, but if it's true, it gets very depressing. Maybe that we entered the phase where fundamentals and technology are no longer important, and it's only about narratives. And no matter how good of a proposal you're going to have and how much you spend developing and building something that's useful for people, you're not gonna get it, especially if it requires a soft fork. Not because it's not great, but because people are afraid of shifting the narrative about what Bitcoin is. and they think that the market will react to that, and they're not sure if the price is gonna go up or down. But there's a risk that it can go down, and they're so afraid that they're gonna lose money on this that they would rather do nothing, because so far the market has rewarded them for doing nothing.
Yeah,
And
it's a good point. I think you are into something. I do hope to. I want to hope that we are still not in this phase and that there is still hope. But to those people, I would reply that honestly, they are dismissing completely the fact that actually doing nothing is the biggest risk of capture you can have, because now you have all those people like Michael Saylor, ETFs, and so on that are capturing more and more of the supply, and then at some point they might want to influence the development of the protocol, and they for them the best thing that can happen is no change at all. So if we are not careful, we give them actually the tools to capture Bitcoin in the way they want, and then they can do like censorship and whatever. They can control it completely. So doing nothing is actually helping those people to actually capture Bitcoin and then completely destroy its value proposition. And I do want to hope that even the market will punish this. Like if it ends up being captured, then there is no point. It has so much value. But it's not clear. I agree with you. Like again, the market is not always rational. But I want to hope that we are not in this phase yet. But I agree, we are close to this already today. We can see it. Like people are, as you said, are worried about changing the narrative of Bitcoin. I can see it very clearly. And now this is why also like they are much more into the store value aspect rather than the P2P cash component. And it's very sad. I wish we had more talks about how to improve Bitcoin as P2P cash and not about how to have the number go up forever, you know. But yeah.
I think for non-technical people, there's a huge disconnect between the fact that Bitcoin gets advertised as something immutable, something that cannot change, something that was released in a perfect state, and we never had perfect money before, but Bitcoin is exactly what we have been looking for. And then there's the fact that you have Bitcoin core developers, and the fact that they're making refinements and improvements, and they come up with proposals, and they try to make Bitcoin more useful. And then they're gonna ask themselves, wait a second, does this mean that Bitcoin is not perfect? Does this mean that Bitcoin can actually have bugs, or that there is some stuff in there that maybe we don't know about and we just assume it's perfect, but in reality it's not? And I think most people never ask the question because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they do ask the question and they do discover something, it's gonna get a lot of people to sell because they're afraid of what might possibly be out there. If you spend a lot of time looking at the Bitcoin code, you actually can come up with some ideas about how you can destroy the system. Just some small changes that you can make to break consensus, or even cause some minor delays in block propagation or something, which is going to cause chaos and can lead to orphaned blocks and reorgs and whatnot. So the more you know about how this works, I guess the less bullish you're going to be about it economically, because you do understand. But on the other hand, you had all of these business marketing people who went there to the guys on Wall Street and they said, this is the perfect money. You're going to make a lot of cash on this one.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. It's an interesting...
I don't know what's the bridge between the two worlds. We need to find a way to explain, to convey the message that, hey, this is still not perfect. Even if it has these qualities, even if we do agree that Bitcoin is this, someone can fuck something up. Like, it wasn't so long ago that Matt Corallo just wanted to have a small optimization and inserted an inflation bug, which was not exploited, was discovered by a Bitcoin Cash developer and disclosed very ethically. Like, at the time, it was like the peak of the fight between BTC and BCH. And some BCH developer found that, and instead of destroying BTC, he went to Greg Maxwell, he went to Peter Willey and all the others and said, hey, look, there's this one here, let's fix it. And he collaborated in fixing it, which is amazing. And it's also what gives me faith in this whole space.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's amazing when you think about it. So I don't know what the answer is about how to build those bridges. Maybe it's something that lies into what we discussed earlier about understanding what it is about. Because at the end of the day, I see Bitcoin as a wake-up call for humanity. And if people wake up and understand that we believe that there was no alternative to the broken system and so on, but now we know that there is an alternative that is possible. And if we have people that wake up on that, then it's a call for freedom. And this is something that you cannot kill, which means, my point is the following. It means that even in the catastrophic event of a technical bug and so on, at some point, if the wake-up call works, you probably can find solutions. Like that is a bit my conclusion about the existential risk between Bitcoin and Ethereum. I would consider that the risk on Bitcoin is more about the tech front, and the risk on Ethereum on the social layer. And then I was thinking, what is the harder to fix? And I do believe that you can always fix a broken tech, but a broken social layer is forever. So I don't know if that makes sense, if I'm clear, but I think that the wake-up call is even more important than what is actually Bitcoin right now. And there will be ways to potentially fix some technical issues always, as long as we have a strong and resilient social layer. But for that, we need more education. We need people to understand why we do that. We need them to care and fight if needed, because at some point, like, we will need to fight. Like at some point, like government and banks and so on, they shifted. Like sometimes they were trying to completely forbid those things, and then they were trying to capture them or take profits from them and so on. But at the end of the day, we need to be ready for the day when they want to shut down it completely, and we'll have to fight, including like, it's also why privacy is super important, preserving privacy also of developers, people that are involved, because you don't want them to be at risk and so on. But yeah, I'm diverging a bit, but I think the bridge is about understanding why we are doing that and trying to peel the wake-up call for everyone. Yeah.
And on the topic of privacy, I can argue that even at the base layer level, Bitcoin does need privacy because miners should not be able to discriminate based on the origin of the transaction.
Yeah, true.
Like that.
It's good for censorship resistance. Exactly, completely. I agree with you. Privacy gives a lot of censorship resistance properties as well, or protection against MEV, or this kind of stuff as well. So it's true. For example, take the example of Cashew. Even if it's non-custodial, if it's custodial, at least it has some very good properties in terms of censorship resistance, because the mint cannot discriminate between users. So that's interesting. So I agree with you. Having privacy on the base layer is very important to improve censorship resistance and makes Bitcoin stronger in general. Yeah.
And I think at this point it's very dangerous that because of the Nazis, KNOTZI,
Yeah.
just for the record,
Yeah.
I'm not getting into World War II
Yeah. It's good that you
conversations.
clarify it, even more for me, because I have my shitty French accent. So maybe when I said it before, it was closer to the other word. So good that you clarify. Yeah, we are
I'm just
talking
saying
about.
it because YouTube is gonna transcribe this and they're gonna think, wait a
Yeah,
second,
yeah,
this guy is into radical politics or whatever.
yeah.
I
Good
don't want
point.
to get mislabeled by the algorithm.
Nice catch. Yeah.
But
Okay.
these guys are basically going down a very slippery slope where they say, well, we don't want this on the blockchain. And I think once you open the floodgates for this kind of self-regulation, which may be malevolent, may be paranoid, I don't know what their intentions are, but then there's gonna be government saying, well, you should also include some filters for copyright material. Like, you should not be able to inscribe copyright material. And then governments will say, well, here's a list of blacklisted addresses that come from Chainalysis.
OFAC compliant stuff and stuff like that. Yeah.
And it's only gonna get worse because once you bend the knee and you say, yes, this is a worthy cause. I mean, I'm not even sure why ocean mining exists. Like, from the beginning, their legitimation was weak. Like, allowing miners to build their own templates. Okay. It's not that big of a deal, but now it seems like they have all the tools basically to have their own fork, to be honest. Like they run their own node client and they have their own mining pool.
Interesting.
And they can also, I think, on the long run, if they keep on getting more users to mine with them, they can stall development, they can blackmail everyone and say, unless you make us happy, we're not going to agree with you.
Yeah. It would be interesting if it was the case, because they are literally accusing the other camp to attack Bitcoin, but maybe it's a good psyop to avoid seeing that they are trying to attack it. So it's weird. I mean, like, I talk to Luke time to time, and like, even if I don't agree with most of his takes, actually, especially outside of Bitcoin, I do want to believe like that he has good intentions in a way, but it's true that it's weird. Like, especially if you see like the propaganda of mechanic, and like there is something weird. I agree with you. Like, if you take all those elements, you combine them, it could be something trying to control the vertical stack and development, as you said, like a client, a miner, implementation, and so on. It will be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, my take on that, on the filter drama and the notes discussion, is that it could have been a good excuse to have a proper conversation about having client diversity on Bitcoin in a proper manner. But now the way it's done is completely crazy bullshit, and it's very counterproductive. So it's only distraction, division. And the problem is that the other side, the Nazis, is mostly playing on the emotional level, trying to craft stupid narratives with child porn and stuff like that. While the other camp is more rational and like pragmatic and presenting like more rational takes, I think. But the emotional side is more likely to win for the plebs and some people that don't understand fully the trade-offs, and they need to believe in something. And so I do see why it works, this technique, but it's very sad. And I hope that, I don't like the fact that Luke is playing this tactic, to be honest. I'm happy that he considered Bitcoin as not final, and that it's no time to ossify completely right now. And like, for example, stuff like enshrining ZK verification, but implying that some people are trying to attack Bitcoin and stuff like that, the way it's done is very bad and counterproductive. It's weird. I mean, it's a complete distraction, and it's true that if you think about who can win the most of the situation, it's probably like the big ones that don't want to see any change, like as we discussed, like the MicroStrategy, ETFs, or governments even. They do have incentives for Bitcoin to not change, and maybe like having some distraction to not talk about governance and not talk about how to improve Bitcoin is good for them. I mean, I don't know, man. It's weird. Yeah.
But I do have to ask at this point, because there is so much manpower, there is so much energy, there is so much knowledge that got poured into these proposals to improve Bitcoin. If they're not happening, do you think that they will die off, or will they move to other networks? Like, do you see a future where all of these ideas get built on Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin? Or do you see a future where some people decide, let's have a developer-friendly fork of Bitcoin, and everyone gets some airdrop, and then they decide which one is the real Bitcoin, the one that's more useful, or the one that's supported by BlackRock?
Okay. It's a good question, and I will be very explicit and honest about my personal opinion on that. I think this can never work and happen. I believe that if this happens, this capture and all this those proposals dying and so on, I think it will just end up with Bitcoin dying, or just being only maybe temporarily a store of value, a digital gold or whatever, but not anywhere close to its original vision of being P2P cash. And I don't think it's possible to have something that will be a developer-friendly fork of Bitcoin, just because the problem is that you cannot reproduce the conditions that Bitcoin had when it, like, if you think about it, the reasons why Bitcoin is there today, how it is insane. Like the likelihood of having all those combination of all those factors, the fact that it was launched without almost anyone caring about it was actually very good, because there was no capture, there was no companies that tried to capture it from the beginning, no VCs, no Premine, no whatever. This right now, you can never reproduce it, because if you make something that is like having some traction, like, because to do it properly, you will need a lot of power, like funding, marketing, coordination, and so on. But it means also that some people will see the potential profits from it and will try to capture it from the beginning and so on. I'm just trying to say that I don't think it's possible ever to reproduce the conditions that were met for Bitcoin to be where it is today. And if Bitcoin does not work and Ethereum as well does not work, because to me, like, even if I said that I went more into the Bitcoin maxi side, I would say today that I only consider Bitcoin and Ethereum as the two systems that have a chance to ever be something that can resist to nation-state attacks. It's just that now I consider the likelihood of that to happen much more in favor of Bitcoin. And I do think that Bitcoin can succeed without Ethereum, but I don't think it's true the other way around. So that's why also I want to put all my focus on Bitcoin. So I would say I'm Bitcoin minimalist, because I think it has the most chances to succeed, and the chances are not that high. So it's a distraction to try to think to make something else work, because, you know, even Bitcoin the fight is far from being over. As you said, it's very risky right now. And to me, this is the one that by far has the biggest chances of success. So no, I don't think it's possible. So if Bitcoin dies, I don't think there will be another opportunity, maybe ever, to be honest, to build something like that. That's why it was also a wake-up call for me personally to realize that, and it was something that helped me to leave out my technical bubble and distraction, working on cool engineering stuff. And this is also why I do like the fact that it's hard to change Bitcoin, because it's also what makes it very special, resilient, and so on. But of course, I do see the downside, as some people that are trying to push innovation on something that can improve it. So it's a double-edged sword. It's very hard, it's frustrating, but I do want to accept this frustration. We need people to act as watchdogs and to try to protect it, even if I am on the other side for this time, and I'm trying to advocate for some stuff that I genuinely believe can improve Bitcoin, but I have to accept the price of it. I have to accept the fact that we need to convince that it's good for Bitcoin. We need to convince that it's not harmful, and I'm willing to play the game. Of course, it's me personally, but some companies, they have some reality, they have some funding, they have some stuff like that. So at some point, maybe some people will say, okay, we cannot afford it. Bitcoin does not want us. We'll do it somewhere else. Maybe this will happen. But I'm just saying, for me personally, I don't believe in such a world where Bitcoin will fail, and there is another attempt to build something that will be unstoppable against nation-state attacks. So that's the last hope we have. This is why also I want to put all my focus on that. Yeah.
I can also argue that there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Bitcoin network itself and whether or not it's going to be sustainable. Like, we can agree that the network is going to fail at one point, and we can move the BTC tokens to another network which has good security and also does not have the same high costs to produce the coins. Even if the price goes down, at least we preserve this system.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like, maybe that the Bitcoin network is just the place of birth and will not be the final phase. And a lot of Ethereum people say this. You come from that camp. They say, well, we can tokenize Bitcoin. It doesn't have to exist on its own blockchain and whatever.
Yeah, but again, for me,
the value of it also comes from the proof of work creation.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like, it will mean like just Bitcoin as a store of value, but not for its censorship resistance properties and whatnot. So it does not make sense for me. I don't want to see this scenario happening. And also something that is I think a bit different if I compare the Bitcoin and ecosystem communities in a way is that like many people on the Ethereum side, I think are worried about what it will take for Bitcoin to succeed completely at the planet scale in terms of how you transition from the fiat broken world to the Bitcoin standard world. And people are worried about the consequences of that, as in like historically disruptive changes like that usually come with a lot of blood or fights or stuff like that. So they're worried about the doom scenario where it's a bit like something like the ultimate consecration of Bitcoin will be a collapse of the fiat system and so on. But the transition to the Bitcoin standard will be painful maybe. And I think some people on the Ethereum side, they want more a happy scenario where we get to decentralized system, but without having to fight very hard and without it's more like the honey badger spirit versus unicorn or maybe chameleon. Like Ethereum wants to like try to feel less harmful, to be like a bit a Trojan horse for the existing system and gradually replace it in a less disruptive way than Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is more like honey badger, does not care, we'll change it, and we need like more cypherpunk people that will want to fight against the system and so on. So, but I'm worried about the capture of the Ethereum philosophy, like doing that very gradually, the Trojan horse for TradFi, because it actually works. But the problem is that then it brings more powerful forces that can capture it. Like, for example, just stable coins are a huge risk, like, because like ultimately, if you have all the DeFi that depends on stablecoin and it depends on central issuers, then they have a huge power of influence over which fork will be the canonical chain and so on. So it's very risky. So it works well, the strategy of being a Trojan horse for TradFi and this kind of stuff. But I think this is also what can kill it. So I very much like more and more like the philosophy of openly saying what we want instead of trying to hide it. And I do want to see Bitcoin as a way to fight a broken system and also to accept the consequences of the transition to a Bitcoin standard in a way. But I do understand that some people are worried about that and they want to think about a happy past and so on. But I believe it's so much a powerful and destructive change that it's very hard to make it like extremely gradually. And it's good to have people that openly state the goals and try to work upon making it a reality. But it means that also at the same time, the risk of ossification is real. I think we need to tend towards ossification at some point, but not now. I mean, like Bitcoin is not final today. We have to fix the security budget, quantum resistance, privacy at the very least. And then gradually tend to ossification by just like bug fixing and cleaning and stuff like that. Yeah.
At the same time, something that I envy about Ethereum, and I'm someone who spent many years dismissing it, making fun of all the mishaps and saying, well, it's so horrible and it's everything that Bitcoin shouldn't be. But at the same time, the dev culture is incredible.
Yeah.
And if the value proposition of Bitcoin is what it is, the value proposition of Ethereum is what it can do. And there's always something that needs to get built to make the price go up. And maybe that it's sort of a race against the clock, because every cycle Ethereum has to come up with some new gimmick or something that it can do in order to capture the attention of the mainstream. In the case of Bitcoin, we can't think of anything significant. Maybe you can say, well, the Lightning Network was major, but in many ways it was a major disappointment also. In the case of Ethereum, you had the ICO, you had the DeFi, you had the NFTs. Nowadays, I see a resurgence in the DAOs, and I'm not sure what is the latest narrative, maybe prediction markets or something else, but that's still something that entered the mainstream. I think Polymarket was huge last year and is still huge right now, and the home of Polymarket is Ethereum. That's where it comes from.
Yeah, that's true. But again, as you said, it's a trap because you need to craft and come up with new narratives and so on. So, and I think it also increases the risk of dilution and distraction. This is something that I like, trying to react to the market and being fear-driven and so on. It's also like maybe the reason why the value proposition of Ethereum is not clear, because it shifted too much. And this cycle, I think it was trapped between institutional interest on Bitcoin and like the DG and retail stuff on Solana, literally. So then the value proposition of Ethereum is not clear. And especially at some point, if Bitcoin can become a settlement layer, then it becomes hard like to think about a clear value proposition. So this is also why the fix the money first aspect of Bitcoin is very, very good, because it's easier to for people to understand it, to educate about it, and so on. And then you consolidate the social layer over time. While if you don't have a clear value proposition, a clear mission, and at the same time it shifted many times over the past years, it becomes hard like to understand clearly the mission, vision, and stuff like that. And if you don't believe like in something very strong, it's harder maybe to get people to get into it in a way that they will want to protect it. Maybe they will come and they will have fun and they will shift from one narrative to another one and they will be okay with that, but in no way they will be involved, and they will feel that they need to protect it, and they will not see the bigger picture of like being able to fight the system and stuff like that. So I think having a very simple mission, and honestly, I believe like what is written here, like fix the money, fix the world. I do believe that the impact of fixing money on the world is so huge that everything else at this time is a distraction. That's also why like I really like this idea of fix the money first. Like, let's not try to distract and try to decentralize everything else, because it's not even clear, to be honest, at this time that they require the other use cases require such a hardcore level of decentralization, censorship resistance, and so on. Where for money is very clear. So let's just fix that, and the impact of that is huge. And like I see it like how Bitcoin is used by human rights activists to fight against tyrannies and so on. Like, I'm very fan of what Alex Glanstein is doing with the Human Rights Foundation. And I saw that with my eyes, like testimonials of people fighting tyrannies and using Bitcoin and Nostr to fight for their freedom, for their lives, for their family. So when you think about it, the impact of fixing the money is so huge for the world. It can improve the world in so many different ways. Or there is another meme or motto in Bitcoin, which is make war unaffordable. And I think it's honestly like, I think it's good also for people to understand that the Bitcoin is also maybe a peaceful exit to the fiat system, and how not having a hard money has a lot of consequences in the world, even for wars and conflicts and so on, because governments, they have to finance war by printing money or devaluating people's money and stuff like that. So if they understand that Bitcoin is really a peaceful exit to the fiat system and you can take your sovereignty and so on, the impact of that is so big that I consider more and more everything else as a distraction, to be honest. Yeah.
At the same time, on the topic of fix the money, fix the world, I do see some interesting improvements in fintech. For example, Apple Pay, which is really amazing because you connect your bank account to your phone, and when you make payments with Apple Pay, you get much better privacy for your payments than when you use your card, as the merchant will not know your name, which I think is a major breakthrough. It gives you sort of what we call in Bitcoin sender privacy, which is achieved in Bitcoin with maybe something like zero knowledge proofs or ring signatures or whatever. And it's sort of a big deal. And when Bitcoin came out, it was very innovative because it provided a lot of features for money that did not exist, like sending money to anyone in the world instantly and also having a degree of anonymity. It was amazing. But nowadays you have services which are much better than PayPal used to be, which enable you to have similar features. And most people are finding basically the use case for Bitcoin in that one. Of course, it's not going to be censorship resistant, and it's not going to provide you any kind of freedom. The service can shut you down anytime, can take away your money. But still, for the part of the world where financial censorship doesn't happen, even though we saw what happened in Canada in 2022 in January.
Yeah.
And somehow we forgot about that very fast. Like we moved on, like, okay, banks are fine. We don't care.
Yeah, no,
But still,
it's not fine. Like even Europe is cooked, like with the CDBC and so on, like digital euro. We are cooked, man. So I agree. Right now, we don't see it as a reality, and we say, okay, it's third world problems and so on. But it will be soon our problems too, even for people in the Western world. To say it and so on. So to be honest, yeah, but it's true that people don't see it as a threat right now, and they are fine not having censorship resistance and stuff like that. But for me, I'm more and more pessimistic. And especially now that I have kids and so on, I'm thinking about their future and so on. And to be honest, I'm very pessimistic about the trajectory of things in Europe and everywhere. So yes, true. Decentralization and censorship resistance don't matter until they do. But usually when they do, it's too late if you don't wake up on time. So we need to be prepared. But I agree with you. What you say is true. And this is literally the reason why people are dismissing Bitcoin in most modern societies or most advanced financial systems and so on, because they have the wrong feeling that they are safe. But it's an illusion right now. So, yeah.
I ran an experiment like 3 or 4 years ago or longer, where something else that I do in my spare time is that I produce the only video game magazine here in Romania. And I had a special run in which people had to send Bitcoin if they wanted to get the magazine. Okay. And I told them, I know it's a major inconvenience for you and you have to understand to learn something new. But at the same time, I think it's something that's useful for you to understand. I just want to say that what really happened is that people got super lazy. There were a couple of guys who did the grind basically and decided, okay, I'm gonna go to this ATM, I'm gonna put cash in it and send to this address. And then people reached out to these guys and said, can you please also do this for me? And I'm gonna give you like €2 extra or something. And it led to this centralization where basically it was just a handful of guys getting the magazines for everyone else who was lazy and they just wanted to send transactions from their card or something. And my experiment was sort of a failure from this point of view, because I realized that even if people have the right motivation and incentive to pursue, to learn about Bitcoin, they choose not to.
Okay. But when you did that, the only way to buy it was with Bitcoin, or you still accepted fiat, but you did a discount if you pay in Bitcoin?
No fiat.
Okay.
I made
but maybe
it
you should consider like a discount, because maybe like seeing concretely that they will pay less if they pay in Bitcoin will be an incentive for them. I don't know if it would be sufficient to overcome their laziness, but yeah, okay, interesting experiment. Yeah.
I gave them no other choice. And some of them complained and they said, oh, you're making it hard to get. And I said, it's not really that hard. I made you like a full page guide on what you have to do.
Okay.
You just scan this QR code at some sort of ATM in your city, or you can onboard an exchange, but I don't recommend it.
There are many ATMs, Bitcoin ATMs in Romania? Or?
Surprisingly, yes, because
really? Interesting.
Some people, there's a lot of remittances in my country. We have, I think from the European nations, we have the largest number of people who work in other countries. We have 1 million people in Italy, 1 million in Spain.
Okay.
We also have like 500,000 in France and also Germany.
And all those people, they send money back to Romania.
Exactly. They make money and they send it back home. And some of them figured out that they can use the Bitcoin ATMs and they have lower fees than with Western Union or MoneyGram or something else. So that's why we have a lot of Bitcoin ATMs, because their family members, they just go and they withdraw cash.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think they even know what's happening there.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. And do you know, like, if there is one, there is a monopoly in terms of vendor for this game? I'm asking because I met the founder of K1 in El Salvador, and I love him. And the K1 ATMs are amazing. So I was wondering, like, if you know about the vendor of those ATMs.
No, as far as I know, so there used to be sort of a monopoly with General Bytes. I think for a long time they were the largest manufacturer. They had like 80% of the market, and everyone
Okay.
was buying from them and rebranding the ATMs. I think right now we do have General Bytes, but I think I've also seen one that's made by Lamasu, which is based in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. And there's
Okay.
also a Polish company that used to be called Shitcoins Club, and now they're called Bitomat, like Bankomat,
Okay.
Bitomat. Anyway,
Okay.
they
Okay.
make their own ATMs and they don't sell them to third parties. They just make them
Uh,
for their own purpose, and it also has an interesting Bitcoin shape. Like it's very hard to mistake it for something else.
okay. And is the regulation friendly on that front? Because, for example, I know that in France, you cannot have ATMs that sell directly Bitcoin. The best you can do is that you can sell a voucher or something like that that can make you redeem some BTC, but you are not allowed to directly sell BTC from the ATM. So I'm wondering, like, if it's friendly in Romania for anyone to buy a Bitcoin ATM and install it in its restaurant or whatever, and start to accept Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin through the ATM. But
There is a regulation that you cannot handle more than 2,000 euro without KYC.
okay. Mm.
So you either set that limit or else you have to create a company and have lawyers and whatever to make sure you comply. And
Okay.
it's only gonna get worse later this year or next year because we had these regulations across the whole European Union with what was it called?
Mika?
Mika, exactly.
Yeah.
And all
Yeah.
the companies need to get licenses
Yeah.
from the European Union,
It's
and
very bad. Yeah, it's
there will
very
be
bad.
no way for
Mm.
you to buy any
Yeah.
Bitcoin legally without
Yeah.
KYC.
Yeah. It's insane. It's very bad. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's like a writing on the wall right now, like, hey, you can still use it for now, but once we get the Mika license, you'll have to present your ID. And I think that's when these businesses will sort of lose a lot of customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
It's a huge inconvenience, and it's also
Yeah.
a security hole just to put your ID there, hoping that
Yeah.
it doesn't get hacked or something.
Yeah. Hmm. That's fucked up. Yeah.
But the regulators, they don't understand. They say, no, we gotta stop criminals. But this, I don't think this has much to do with Bitcoin. It has a lot to do with the war on cash that's happening all around Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It's more
It's
that it's not targeted against Bitcoin for sure, but consequence of that is that it affects Bitcoin. But yeah, I don't think it's the primary target. Yeah, I agree with you. Mm.
You can already see how the 500 euro bills are disappearing, and the value of the 100 euro bill goes down every year.
Yeah. It's insane. Even now to just withdraw like the yeah, it's illegal to hold more than I don't remember how much in France, and also the withdrawal limits are insanely low now, much more than they were a few years ago. So the trend is really not good in terms of like owning your own money and do everything you want with it. Like that's
Wait,
also
so
why.
it's illegal to hold a certain amount of cash?
Yeah.
That's
Without,
insane.
I mean, you can, but you need to disclose exactly how you got it and so on. Like it's yeah,
So basically, invite people to steal it from you.
kind of exactly. Yeah, it's very bad. Yeah. Anyway,
Like you disclose it to some government institution, and you have to trust that they will not get hacked or divulge
yeah,
it to some employee who's gonna tell someone else that, hey, this guy's holding his money under the mattress.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
just horrible.
Yeah, that is horrible. And now even like I think right now I cannot even withdraw more than 1,000 euros without asking approval from my bank and telling them why I want to withdraw this and so on. And the amounts keep decreasing over time, you know. So it's they are doing a war against cash, as you said. It's very clear. Yeah.
But I had this funny situation earlier this year with my bank because I bought my car in December of last year, and they wanted to know exactly what happened there, why I have this large amount of money. And I explained to them exactly what happened. And then they said, well, we want you to provide documents about
Yeah.
where you got your Bitcoin from, when you bought it, what price
Yeah.
it was. And I was like, that was almost 10 years ago, man. Who holds documents for something
Yeah.
like this?
Yeah.
It's really crazy. And I told him, if I told you that I got it from gambling or that I do prostitution, you'd just say, ah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
You'd look the other way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now that you hear that it's Bitcoin, like, it's really crazy. The
Yeah.
amount of paperwork
true.
that you need to have and the stuff that you need to justify.
And you managed to convince them to do without those documents, or like you found
Yeah,
another
I
way?
couldn't
Yeah.
find anything. I told them, you can
Yeah.
do whatever. You can shut down my
Yeah.
account, but just
Mm.
remember
Yeah.
that I have been your customer since I was a teenager,
Mm.
and I were receiving allowance in the same account from the government. And you can see my whole history. You can see I'm not a bad actor. Like they said, yeah, we have to do this to comply with norms and regulations against prevention of terrorism. And I was like, are you seriously giving me this crap? Like, you can see my whole history.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know exactly what I bought and how much money I had, and now
Yeah.
you're telling me, oh, I'm potentially a terrorist.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the employees also find it ridiculous, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they
They have
have
no
to
choice.
comply.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
They realize they're losing customers because of this, and people don't like them. There's a movement here in Romania for people to use more cash, but they limited the amount that you can spend in one transaction to 2,000 euro per transaction.
Okay.
So if anything is more expensive than this, it needs to go for a bank.
Okay. I see.
You can't buy a car, you can't buy a home, you can't buy anything.
Yeah. But isn't it
Major.
an opportunity to push for Bitcoin, more Bitcoin adoption? Like, or is it hard like to accept and receive payments in Bitcoin in Romania? Like,
I think it became worse, to be honest.
it became worse.
There
Okay.
used to be some shops that were accepting it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, for example, this laptop that I'm using, I got it from a shop that was accepting Bitcoin. Now they don't anymore because of Mika.
Oh. Oh shit.
And
Okay.
I think they were using the same payments processor out of convenience. Like they did not have BTC Pay or something set up. And when Mika emerged, they were like, yeah, we have to provide these documents. And then they looked at the sales statistics and they said, oh, we make like 4,000 euro a month from this. It's not worth it to spend money on lawyers and whatever just to keep this going.
Okay. That's sad.
It is.
Yeah.
But it also goes back to the fact that we failed to make any significant grassroots adoption happen. We always created companies and relied on third parties and worried too much about regulations. And now I think is a pretty bad time to start building.
I think we do see some grassroots adoption, but on smaller scale, like in circular economy places like in Costa Rica, Salvador, in Africa. It's small scale, but I do see like this happening, like people on the ground, like helping people to start accepting Bitcoin payments and so on. I think it's places where it makes more sense naturally. Like obviously, we are in countries with a very weak currency or very strong inflation, like in Turkey or Argentina. They understand more naturally the first part about the consequences of having weak money like fiat. And then they are more in favor in learning and understanding what Bitcoin can bring on the table. Or countries with less financial inclusivity, or people that are unbanked, or people, that I think, it's slow, but it's happening, I would say. And I saw that in some of those countries, like in circular economies, and I think it's great. But yeah, to go from this to the next level and having mass adoption is not easy, but yeah.
I was referring specifically to Europe because
Europe,
we have a situation here which is very disappointing. Like I see so much propaganda about European Union winning and being great and having all the right policies, but then you see them banning AI. and you see them having all of these regulations which are very much against forward thinking, against technology. And you see the startups going to the US if they want to raise capital, and you see that there isn't much that's interesting that's happening here. They're super conservative in some ways. They think that they're smart because they're collecting taxes from these tech companies, and they have a few tax havens in Ireland and Malta where a lot of these financial and technology companies are operating, but we're not really producing much innovation anymore.
Yeah, completely. No, I'm very pessimistic. For me, like, Europe is cooked right now, because the problem is that it's a very bad cocktail, because it's bad both economically speaking, innovation, tech, and also kind of identity crisis across the whole Europe, and almost like civilizational war in a way. So if you have all those components together, it's a very bad cocktail. So yeah, Europe is maybe not cooked, but not going in the right direction right now. So yeah,
we could be going in the right direction if there was more focus on thinking about the future. Because you have some of the same ethnic and national clashes in the US, but they don't have any problem getting the smartest minds in AI. And also,
that's exactly my point. If you have only one of those issues, it's fine. As you said, US also has the same ethnic and civilizational issues, but economically they are way better and favorable for innovation and so on, which mitigates the other problem. But in Europe, we have both at the same time, which makes it very hard.
We just fall behind, and even our universities, I'm not sure if they're that great anymore for research.
I'm wondering. Maybe also even education is decreasing. That's true.
But at least in Romania, we have this very powerful European Union propaganda that still works, and people think, we are ahead, we are doing great. These people from Brussels, they're smart, they know what they're doing.
Okay, interesting. People still believe it. Okay.
I mean, in my part of the world, it almost seems binary. Like, you either embrace this or you let Russia embrace you.
Okay.
So I guess it's good to have a dose of hopium and say, yeah, we made the right choice because these people are great.
I see.
Coming from France, I think, is a bit different.
It's a bit different, yeah. It's also fucked up, but for different reasons, yes. Yeah.
I mean, I understand why you think that Europe is cooked, because France is in a very bad situation nowadays.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Completely fucked up. The government is fucked up. Like, they have a big divide in the society, and
I actually studied for 6 months at Sciences Po in Paris.
Oh, really?
I was an exchange, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
I could already see, because my scholarship was 500 euro per month, and this meant I could only live in a very bad area. It was Villiers-le-Bel up north. So there's Saint-Denis, and then there's Gonesse at Nouville, and then there's Villiers-le-Bel. It was not even on the metro map. And I could see the divide in there. There was, on the left side of the metro exit, the Arab neighborhood. And they had their own shops, they had their own businesses. It felt different. And on the right side, you had the Africans. That was on the African side. And I could see that there was a lot of tension. Like, they would not talk to each other. Sometimes there were fights. More often than not, there were infights, like just random people fighting in the street. And I could also see them not paying for, it's not metro, it's RER, which is like a regional train. They were jumping across the fence to not pay for tickets, and they had their own methods to escape paying. And I could see that they're not even trying to be like, there was a huge discrepancy between what you would see in Paris, the city, compared to what was happening there. It's almost like they were not trying to be French. They're acting like they're somewhere else and they have their own country in there.
And it's sad. And And yeah, for me, I feel particularly impacted because I'm also coming from immigration, but I did not behave like that. I think right now, like both camps are going too extreme, and there is no nuance anymore. But I think it's still it is possible to integrate properly in society without losing your roots and identity. Uh, so I think it's very sad to end up in this situation where both sides cannot understand each other, and it becomes there is some extremization of the situation, extreme polarization, and it's very bad. Yeah. And as you said, it was 10 years ago. So imagine now, it's worse now. So yeah.
I haven't been to that area recently. I'm not sure if I want to, but it was weird. I was just grabbing a book every morning and sitting down, reading the book, pretending I don't see anything around me. In some ways, it was productive. Like, I spent so many hours reading just during my commute. But on the other hand, I knew I couldn't. First of all, I'm not so good in French. On the other
Okay.
hand, I could not really understand them because they do speak French, but with a different accent.
Yeah, I see.
The way
Okay,
that
yeah.
they pronounce words is different.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it makes sense. And how I'm curious about the impact of like, do other countries like Romania, maybe as example, is looking at this example, and like are going more extreme in their immigration policy and stuff like that. How
You're
is it going?
funny. You're so funny.
Why?
You have no idea. We got like hundreds of thousands of people from India and Nepal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Okay.
We got a lot of these migrants who came here for work. Nepal is politically in a very bad situation. Their
Yes.
government collapsed and they had
Yeah.
to vote on
On
Discord.
Discord. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's interesting.
And
Yeah.
these people are willing to work for like 500 euro per month. And they also have enough money to send something home. So
Okay.
I don't know exactly where they sleep and what they eat because life here has become very expensive because of this. So the post-pandemic inflation and the Ukraine war and the fact that we're supporting all of this and we also send quote unquote free electricity to both Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova, and the incompetence of our politicians and all of these factors have added up, and life right now is very expensive. Like if you look at grocery costs, it's no different from France or Germany,
Oh, wow.
and the
Okay.
salaries are
It's way
lower than
lower.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I see these people from Nepal, they come here, they do mostly, I think, construction, and
Okay.
also they deliver food for
Uh,
all of these corporations like Bolt or whatever.
okay. Yeah.
I see them
And
on
how do
bicycles or
people,
scooters.
what do people think about them generally? Like, are they afraid of like producing what happened in other countries like France, or like do they feel less safe because of this? Like, this phenomenon is something recent. What you
It's
mentioned,
very
like,
recent, yeah.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like the last
So,
couple of years.
okay. And do you see like people like turning against, like, is there a political movement that is against that, or like trying to?
There is, but it's labeled, so it's almost like they're copying scripts from other countries. It's labeled
Okay.
in the same way as Front National in
For us,
France. They say
yeah.
they're extremists, they're horrible
Okay.
people, they're stupid. I think that's the most prevalent narrative about them, that they're stupid.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the way that they get dismissed, even though they do end up in presidential races or something. In the last election, they ended up in the last round.
Okay. So very similar to France, actually.
It
Okay,
is,
interesting.
yeah. It is very
Huh.
similar. And I don't know where
Okay.
this is going. The narrative that I heard is that these people are not willing to stay, and we do like to laugh at this idea as Romanians. We say these people, okay, they work here, but they don't want to stay here. They want to go to Germany, they want to go to France, they want to go to Sweden or some welfare state that's gonna give them free
Okay.
stuff because we're not giving them too much free stuff.
Interesting.
But
So
we
it's
don't
just
know if they're gonna make kids here and what impact that's going to have.
uh,
It's still
okay.
a new phenomenon. I'm not sure what they're thinking, if they like our country, if they think
Mm,
it sucks and they want to go somewhere else. Once they get their Schengen visa, they can go to any other country, but
okay.
I don't know. It's still a new
Interesting.
phenomenon for us. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
we're gonna end up with the same crisis or we're just gonna unload the crisis on France and
Uh,
Germany.
yeah. So you will even increase our crisis and load. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Oh wow, man. Yeah. Yeah. That what you said reminds me a lot of France, actually, like the Front National and so on, and the fact that for many years, what saved us in a way was the fact that they were also dismissed as stupid, but and also evil and so on because of their affiliation with Jean-Marie Le Pen and what he did in the past and so on. So it was easy for people to classify them as evil. But now they are much smarter than before, like with younger people, like good-looking people, talking in a good way, like not being associated with this. So yeah, over time, people are more and more willing. And at the same time, you have like this feeling of being unsafe that is rising and so on. So people are like, so I think the next election will be interesting, like in 2 years. It might be the turning point, but yeah, it's a bit. I'm worried because all that is happening in Europe reminds me a bit of the Europe in the 30s. You know, when like how the extreme right on all the countries emerged, and we all know how it ended up. But yeah, I don't know. At the same
I think
time,
our
even
generation is softer, to be honest. Like
maybe, yeah.
maybe that we're not gonna go to the same lengths. And by we, I mean our generation. If people get
But at the same
radicalized,
time, it's true, but at the same time, our generation did not face this. So over time, you forget the impact of this, like for the World War II and what happened. You see what I mean? So it's true, but at the same time, maybe people will say, okay, it's okay. And, we'll go into it and we will forget how it can end up. Yeah, you see what I mean? So I agree with you, but yeah, I don't know if the collective human memory is strong enough to. Yeah, and at the same time, to be honest, like I do understand some people that feel that as their last hope and choice. And I'm worried for my kids because I'm from the immigration. My wife is not, so our kids are métis. How do you say? You understand métis? How do you say it in English? We're both like I'm from immigration, but my wife is not. So our kids are. How do you say métis in English? I forgot the word.
I don't know, mixed origins.
Yeah, okay. There is no word for that. Mixed race, mixed blood. Okay. Yeah. So I'm worried for them and the world they will grow up and so on, because I want a good balance in them not losing their roots and so on, but being properly integrated in society and everything like I did, like contributing actively to society and so on. But so I do understand both sides, and I do understand that some people are worried and they can like make some shortcuts and target a certain group of people as a general problem. And because as I said, the combination of both the economically bad situation plus that makes it like it's a multiplier of the problem. Like if the economic situation of the country was way better, it would be way less of an issue, in my opinion. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, but coming back to Bitcoin, I
Oh
think
yeah.
short term it's horrible. Long term it makes the printers create more money. And it might just be the catalyst that gets more people to understand why Bitcoin matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because immigration is one of these issues where it's very difficult to deal with the situation and you need a lot of disposable money to be able to handle all the challenges. So it just leads to more inflation.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
you
that's
have like a stable ethnic community in your country, and I can think, for example, of Baltic states, even though it's not a great example because they used to be part of the USSR, they have a lot of Russians, but they're just Christian white and they don't have much immigration going on. And for them,
yeah.
it's very easy to handle. For example, I remember Estonia being presented as this very advanced electronic digital country that can even have remote voting on your computer and stuff like this, which seemed very utopian in the 2010s. but it was happening in Estonia, but their population is like 2 million, which is a small European city.
Yeah.
So it works on a small scale when
On a
you
small
have
scale, exactly.
consensus among people and
Yeah.
similar history and origins and language, like not too many differences.
Yeah. It's hard to scale it. I agree with you. Yeah.
And the less scaling you have, the more expenses. So
yeah, maybe one problem, like I don't know if it's specific to France, maybe not. The problem that the country itself is centralized, pretty much concentrated in very small number of cities, which is this is where the most economic activity happens, which means if it was more distributed, maybe the problem would be manageable, because as we said, on a smaller scale, it would be way easier to properly integrate people. Also, there will be less concentration of, so the fact that those countries are pretty centralized, like most of the activities happening in Paris, in France, for example, I think at least it does not help.
I think it's the normal Pareto distribution, because you find that all over the place. In some countries, it's much worse. For example, I can think of Argentina, which has Buenos Aires, which is the main hub for economic activity. And when I was in Argentina, it was the peak of their hyperinflation. And people told me, people have it pretty good here. Like, you look around, you see these people from this neighborhood. I think it was called Palermo. And they were telling me this is not the real experience of the average Argentinian. Okay. If I really want to see what's happening, I should move into the villages outside, because all the wealth of the country is moving through Buenos Aires.
Okay.
And it's not like this in most European countries. We have hubs, of course. We have regions that are wealthier than others.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. It's less concentrated than in Argentina, for example. Yeah. That's
and
true.
Also African countries where just the capital is developed and the rest of it is just some villages.
Yeah. That's true.
I think decentralization, and we can generalize this, is like a sign of high development.
Yeah, that's true. I think we can generalize it like that.
The lesser developed something is, the more centralized it needs to be to develop.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, like all of these new coins that launch, they need to be centralized in the beginning. Bitcoin was centralized in the first couple of years when Satoshi was around.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But in this case, like, the problem is that you don't want to trust them that they will decentralize over time, because it's easy to say it, but the incentives are usually not there. And you can argue that it's the same for example, Layer2s on Ethereum or whatnot. And it is true that people have the companies that build those Layer2s, they have small incentives to actually decentralize. First of all, because unfortunately people don't care, and there is no demand for that. So people are fine using those centralized solutions for a very long time, maybe forever. And then also maybe they will think about shrinking their revenues. They let people to be part of the network and so on. So again, of course, I will speak about Starknet example, but we are the only example that does not just talk about decentralization. We are actually decentralizing. Right now, Starknet, even today, is already decentralized with multiple sequencers. We also decentralize the stack, which means like we have diversity for sequencer, full nodes, and so on. In fact, we are literally the only layer 2 that has this diversity. In fact, we are even more decentralized than alt layer 1s, which is surprising, like more decentralized than Solana or any alt layer 1s in terms of client diversity, or even I checked even the number of people outside of the company that contributes to the improvement proposal of the protocol. We are even more decentralized than Solana, surprisingly. So it's interesting. Anyway, just wanted to say about the lack of incentives for, in general, in the space to decentralize. So, and you have to trust the good intentions of the people. So, and this is something that you want to avoid in the first place. So, we want to build trustless, permissionless systems. But at least I wish that the people would reward more the people that are actually doing it for real, and so on. But yeah.
I feel stupid for asking you this so late into the interview, but was Starkware basically your personal bridge that helped you start working on Bitcoin? Was it because of Starkware's ambition to become this system that works on both Ethereum and Bitcoin that you started building on Bitcoin in the first place?
No, in terms of, I did want to do that way before joining Starkware. I never had the opportunity to actually do it. So yes, Starkware, my job in Starkware enabled me to do that, also because I wanted to, and gave me like the time, resources to actually do it. But in terms of me personally, I already wanted to do that. It's just that before I was too deep into Ethereum core development, so I never had the opportunity to actually do it. So I was just a Bitcoiner, but without actually contributing to Bitcoin ecosystem. But yeah, Starkware and our expansion plans and so on gave me the tools to do that. And also I contributed to also make Starkware consider going on Bitcoin in the first place. So it's both ways. Yeah.
To the average untechnical person who's gonna be hopefully listening up to this point, what is like the elevator pitch? Why should they be open-minded about what Starkware is building?
Good question. For Bitcoiners specifically. Okay. So I think they should be open-minded for a simple reason. What we are building, first of all, I will say the pitch without even mentioning Starknet. This is very important for people to understand. Stark proofs, as I said earlier, is a completely new paradigm shift in the way you do verifiable computation and everything. So it does not have to be correlated to any blockchain. And in particular, it does not have to be associated with Starknet. That's the first thing. Second thing is that all we do on the zero-knowledge proofs proving infrastructure is open source. Both the research and the code and everything is open source and can be used by anyone. It's fully permissive license and anyone can use it. And Stark proofs can be beneficial for Bitcoin even today. We did not touch precisely about some use cases, but you mentioned briefly one of them, which is to be able to verify the validity of the whole blockchain by just taking a proof in seconds. In fact, it's milliseconds. We did that recently, and we are generating full proofs of the whole Bitcoin header chain on mainnet. We broke the world record in order to about the time needed to generate the proof. We were able to do that in 6 hours, 6.5 hours for generating the proof for the whole chain. And this is very important to understand that you do that once, and then with the proof, anyone can verify it in a few milliseconds, even on the toaster, as I said. I'm not joking. You can verify the proof in the very small devices. So this kind of stuff can be beneficial for Bitcoin today. So not this talking about changing Bitcoin. So you need to understand that. And this tech is open source and has been proven in terms of it works, not only on the theoretical level, but also in production. It has been battle tested for years in production on very large scale and so on. So yeah, it does not have to be correlated to a particular blockchain. It's open source, it's battle tested, it works, and it can be beneficial for Bitcoin today without a soft fork. And then if you are open to learn more and think about the benefits for Bitcoin long term, I think the endgame vision would be interesting if we could verify Stark proofs on Bitcoin, as I mentioned before, which would be a way to improve Bitcoin as programmable money in a way that scales to the masses without losing self-custody. And as bonus points, it can be also helpful for privacy and quantum resistance. For example, we are exploring today how we could use Stark proofs to do quantum resistant signature aggregation on Bitcoin. We are doing some experiments. For example, we are talking with Hunter Beast, who is the author of BIP360 on Bitcoin. We will do an experiment using our proving technology on a system that he designed. Yeah, so that would be the pitch for what stocks, why stocks can be interesting in the context of Bitcoin. And this is not even talking about Starknet. And then if you are already convinced about the benefits of zero knowledge proofs, and you want to see in practice, in action, what it could be, an actual Bitcoin layer 2 on Bitcoin, assuming we could do what I mentioned before, verifying proofs, then you can check Starknet and the kind of application that you can do today and the kind of UX you can have with wallets, with stuff like Face ID authentication or session keys for games if you're into gaming, this kind of stuff. Yeah.
That was one long elevator ride.
Sorry. Way too long. Yeah. But TLDR Stark's good, open source, battle tested, and can be good for Bitcoin today without soft fork.
There's this meme that was posted also on the Bitcoin Takeover Twitter page, which you should follow, by the way, that one Stark proof is smaller than a photo on your phone, is cheaper than a Big Mac combo to generate, and takes less than the blink of an eye to verify.
Yeah.
Such a cool way to present this.
Yeah.
But what does it mean that it's cheaper than a Big Mac combo to generate?
Yeah. Okay, so I should have started by that because I did this meme. I came up with this idea of doing this analogy. So, the Big Mac is for the proving. This is the cost of generating the whole proof, and we are talking about the proof for the whole Bitcoin header chain from Genesis to now. So all the 16 years of Bitcoin blockchain history. So this was the cost, the concrete cost that we paid Starkware to generate this proof. This proof will make it accessible to anyone to verify, and anyone can verify it in less than the blink of an eye, so in 50 milliseconds, and on a very small device, like a toaster, for example, or Raspberry Pi or whatever. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think, if anything, this meme is more powerful than all that explanation.
Okay.
The elevator pitch.
Yeah, it's good to know. So I will do that more because it's a pity because I did that. I came with the meme and I also thought that it was a good idea for people to understand. Also, when we did the record and when we communicated about it, we realized that there is a lot of misconceptions and confusion in the Bitcoin community about the distinction between proving and verification. Because we communicated the record about the proving time, and people thought that it was the time you need to verify. And they were saying, but look, with my, I don't remember what was the name of the fast sync mode, I can verify the chain in 4 hours. And then I realized that, okay, there is huge confusion. And they don't understand that it means that you can verify in 50 milliseconds. And then this is when I started to think about analogies. And then I came up with this idea of the memes with the Big Mac, the iBlink, and stuff like that. Yeah. But it's good to know that it's a good way to, I will use it more. Yeah.
I think you already hinted at the difference between them, but concisely, how do you describe the difference between ZK Snarks and ZK Starks?
Okay, yeah, very concisely. So ZK Starks, no trusted setup, so better, you don't need to trust anyone. Quantum secure, so that's good if you want something that is future proof, that you won't change in a decade or whenever quantum becomes a real threat. They have better scaling properties as well, and they are using no additional trust cryptographic assumptions. So they are hash-based, so simple crypto, no trusted setup, better scaling properties, and future-proof.
Okay. Is there any way that ZK Snarks can become quantum resistant? Because I've been looking into it and thinking hard about it. My idea was basically that if you forked Zcash with the Bitcoin UTXO set, you could have a much better Bitcoin that's like a Swiss bank for holders. And
so yeah,
I was thinking of the challenges long term. I think the scaling still needs work, and there's also the quantum resistance. But otherwise, I think 1/3 of the problem at least is solved already.
Yeah. So the distinction between stocks and stocks I made is a bit too binary in the sense that it was true at the beginning, but now the frontier between the two is a bit more blurry. There are some quantum resistant snarks, and there are even some snarks with without trusted setup as well. So it's not as binary as it was. So yes, TLDR, it's possible to design a snark system that is quantum resistant. So for example, Binius is one of them, built by irreducible team. So yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Okay, what else should I ask you? Is there anything you wanted me to ask you, but I didn't?
Good question. No, we discussed already about the filter war.
We talked about your journey.
Yeah.
Oh, Nostr and Cashew. Work on these. I saw on your GitHub page.
Yeah, we are doing some pretty cool experimentation using Stark's proofs for Cashew and Nostr. So for Cashew, what we do, you are familiar with Cashew, right?
Yeah, it's Chaumiany Cache, like a federation on top of Lightning.
Yeah. Okay, so you can have perfect privacy, but it's custodial. So you need to trust the mint, but the mint cannot rug pull you particularly, so it cannot discriminate between users. Okay. And then in Cashew, so the UX is amazing because it's literally instant, and you can send the tokens without connection, and it's extremely low fees, and it's amazing. In terms of UX, it's unbeatable. You cannot beat the UX of Cashew for payments, that's for sure. But of course, it comes with the downside of being custodial. So it's good for many things, but it's not a silver bullet because of this. Okay. And then in Cashew, Kali, the creator of Cashew, wants to introduce spending conditions, which will give programmability. Like, for example, you want to send the token, but only if after a certain time, which is the most basic condition, time lock or something like that, and then maybe more advanced constructions. The problem is that originally he thought about mimicking the way it's done on Bitcoin with pay to public key hash or this kind of stuff. But the problem is that you cannot really do that on Cashew because it will break the privacy, because it reduces the anonymity set. Because then you can discriminate between people that are using plain Cashew tokens versus people that are using pay to public key hash tokens and this kind of stuff. So that's why we talked about using zero-knowledge proofs for that. And the idea is that, and we did it, and we will communicate about it soon. We did a fork of Cashew where we implemented the possibility for anyone to write spending conditions in Cairo. So I did not mention, but Cairo is the language that we created, and anything that you develop in Cairo becomes verifiable. You can generate a Stark proof with it. So you define your spending condition in Cairo, so which is a smart programming language. So you define whatever you want. It can be a hash time lock contract or whatever. And then the recipient of the token needs to generate a proof of the valid spending conditions, and then sends the proof to the mint. And the mint will just verify the proof, but he will not learn anything about the spending conditions. He will just know that both the sender and the recipient agrees that I should move the tokens, and that's all I need to know. So you keep still the privacy, because the mint does not know and cannot discriminate between users, and you have expressivity and programmability. So this is something that we did in the Cashew mint, in the protocol, and also in wallets, and we will communicate about it. So that's one experiment we are doing with Cashew. In the future, you could also imagine, if you were able to verify proofs on Bitcoin, you could imagine to have proof of liability scheme on Cashew, where the mint would put some of the reserves on Bitcoin L1, and then you could prove that the mint has some reserves and so on. So to avoid the risk of fractional reserves or rug pull, you could do that. But for that, you will need the proof. But what we did, we can do it now without any change on Bitcoin. So you find the spending conditions in Cairo, and then the mint does not know anything about them. So you still have privacy, and then you gain expressivity. So this is something we did with Cashew. For Nostr, I will mention just one project. We are doing multiple. But one thing I'm very bullish about on Nostr is DVMs, which are data vending machines. So the idea is that, because some people that know Nostr believe it's only about social media, but in fact, Nostr is much more than that. I honestly believe it can reshape the way we think about internet. And there is something in particular that I am particularly excited about, data vending machine. So this is the idea. that you can use Nostr as a coordination layer between customers and service providers. So you can see it as a digital permissionless marketplace of services. And then it works as the following. The customer, the user, will send a job request. We'll say, for example, I want a translation service for this. And then you will have service providers that will send some quotes on the Nostr network. And then the customer will choose. And then the service provider will perform the job and send the job back to Nostr. And what we did, I was thinking that, okay, in the future, it would be amazing if you can have like decentralized permissionless Amazon, for example. Anyone can build permissionless services and sell them on the internet in a censorship manner. But in this world, I was thinking that maybe you will want a way to verify the integrity of the computation that was performed by the service provider. So what I did is an experiment where the service provider is not only generating the job results, but also a proof that it was done correctly. And then the customer will get the job result and will be able to verify in the browser that the job was executed correctly. And I think it's especially important in the era of AI. It will be so important that we can verify, like, because right now we are going in a world where we are trusting those big OpenAI Anthropic companies. We don't know how they train their model and everything. So I think it's very important to think about a way where you can have like what we call the integrated web, where you can verify anything. So I did an experiment on that with Nostr data vending machine. I did not push into for it a lot, but some people were excited about it, so I might do another push. But for that, maybe there will need to be more adoption of Nostr in the first place to pitch about verifiable computation over Nostr, maybe. But yeah, that's a few examples. Sorry, I was a bit long.
Oh, that's pretty good. Actually, my Forrest Gump story about Cashew and Xiaomi and eCash on top of Lightning is that I was sitting in a bar, I think it was 2022, right next to Kale, the creator of Cashew. And he was babbling about Xiaomi and eCash and how you can build that on top of Lightning. And we were just drinking beer and I was half drunk.
Okay.
And the next week, after he flew back home, he actually released the first version of Cashew. And I remember being like, oh, this guy was serious about it. And then I saw how Jack Dorsey endorsed it, and then it became a big thing, and he got a lot of money from that deal. And now he's very popular, and he's like one of the top Bitcoiners when it comes to posting stuff and getting reactions. And it's like, you know, it's that guy from the bar. And I remember when I was there, he mentioned
that's
it.
An interesting story. Yeah, I really love him. I think he's, and by the way, it's funny because he's very into the core of the filter drama right now. The Nazis are very much against him. Like they're all attacking him and so on, which is crazy because he's one of the most cypherpunk person I know. He has very good intentions for Bitcoin and he's doing amazing stuff. And still people are implying crazy stuff about him and so on. So it's insane. So I very much support Kali. Kali is amazing. He's literally dedicating his life to build freedom tech and improve people's lives. But for real, like not just talking about it, literally, he's building stuff that, like for example, BitChat now that was used a lot in Nepal in the crazy situation and so on. We're not talking about just theoretical stuff. He's literally dedicating his life about building freedom tech and privacy. And it is risky. As we said before, working on privacy stuff is not easy. So yeah, I just wanted to shout out Kali. He's amazing. Keep up building, man. It's insane. And honestly, like the people, the Nazis that are after him, you are so dumb. People like just realize what he's trying to do, and you will realize that you are mistaken your enemy. Anyway.
I also want to mention the fact that Bitcoin was created specifically to decentralize eCash. And then someone came and said, you know what we can build on top of Bitcoin? eCash.
We go back full circle. Yeah,
exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I got rugged one time. I think.
No way. Really?
It was called eNuts or something on my phone. Let me check.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, eNuts. It was very early. And I think basically they were running on some sort of LN-bits server. Okay. And the maintainers of the servers were not happy that someone deployed this stuff on their server and they asked them to move.
Oh, okay.
and then they moved to their own server. So I'm not sure who got my $5 or something. Maybe it
Okay.
was the Cashew developers, maybe it was LN Bits. I don't know. It's just that
Okay.
it was one of these situations where very early I realized, okay, this can't really work in the way that I want,
Oh yeah, for sure.
or
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it was too early.
Yeah. I think like right now it's way better than it was, and it's developing very fast. And Kali already has some good idea to mitigate the risk, like with the proof of liability scheme and so on, with a design where you will be able to audit the reserves of the mint and detect that the mint is cheating or not, and so on. But yeah, for sure, you need to be aware of the trade-offs and the fact that it's custodial and the mint can rug pull everyone at any time. Yeah, for sure. I think it's just like an interesting incremental improvements, a bridge towards going to self-custodial way later, and also like it's better than the status quo for sure. Like if you could have like private banks that are using Cashew, this kind of stuff. So this is why I support Cashew and this, even if it's like not the end game for what I want to see in terms of self custody, sovereignty, and so on, of course. But I see it as an incremental improvement and potential bridge for people to get into this. Yeah.
I remember interviewing Kali 2 years ago in Prague. It was him and Lisa Nygut together. Nifty
Okay.
Nay, if
Nifty. Yeah, I
yeah,
know her.
if that's how
Definitely.
you know her.
Yeah.
And basically, what I respect about him is that at the time, Cashew was starting to get traction and people were presenting it as a scaling solution.
Mm.
And Kale was making a big effort to say that
Yeah.
this is not scaling
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
If you
He
want to
was
scale
very
Bitcoin,
honest about.
you should
Yeah.
look into other ways to do it, but this does
Yeah.
not serve the purpose of scaling. It's for
Exactly.
people who are already using custodial wallets, and it's in order for them to get some privacy against the custodian.
Exactly. Yeah. And he was always honest about that. So this is why I respect him a lot for this, because he's not trying to sell it as something that it's not. So yeah, it's very important. Yeah.
I think essentially that's the difference between something legit and a scam. It's
Yes.
the way in which you present it.
Yeah, as long as you are honest on the trade-offs and the trust assumptions and everything. Yeah, exactly. I think this is a good distinction, actually. Yeah.
But then again, you're gonna get people saying, well, you can also have sophisticated scams where simultaneously what you say is true and what's happening just flies under the radar for most people, like they can't catch it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do see people saying these kind of things. That's true. But then what to do, man? Then you just wait until you can do the perfect thing and then you do nothing. Yeah, I don't think it's better. So, yeah.
I see a lot of nihilism in Bitcoin with a lot of ossifiers dismissing everything. So it's funny to look at their mental gymnastics because it's hard for them to argue that Bitcoin is already perfect with a straight face. So they have to come up
Yeah.
with creative excuses to not let
Mm.
stuff get built. And once again, this goes back to what I saw this year when I went to a couple of Ethereum conferences. These people are just building, good or bad, they're making it happen, and then they let the market decide if it's good or bad. In
Yeah.
the case of Bitcoin, you almost have to ask for permission from node runners to keep your stuff
Yeah.
and be like, I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna deploy some ZK proofs and I'm gonna use Bitcoin as a data availability layer. Or I hope
Mm.
you don't mind. I'm gonna be opening Lightning or Arc or some other kinds of channels on the
Yeah.
base layer. It is a bit depressing when you think about it, and
It is.
I do wish we scaled better to the point where, on one hand, it did not require industrial grade servers to run a node, but also people could build without making a big deal out of it.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. It is frustrating for sure. As I said earlier, I know that we have to pay the price, but it is for sure frustrating, and I wish it will be easier to just debate the idea and not the people and consider like in a rational way what it could bring to Bitcoin and so on. But yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
I also think that part of the fragmentation is this distinction between developer events like BTC, like TabConf, like a
Yeah.
bunch of them that are out there and they focus on builders, up next and whatnot. And then you have the general Bitcoin events. You have Bitcoin
Yeah.
2025 in Las Vegas, or you have BTC Prague, or you have all of these events that celebrate non-technical people,
Yeah.
like financially successful guys, Wall
Yeah.
Street types, and they go on stage and they sell some sort of narrative about what Bitcoin is, which goes against what you hear at the developer conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
the average person most likely is going to go to the bigger event where they
for
meet more
sure.
people and they interact with the community and they feel like they're part of a movement, and they lose a lot. And what's really unfortunate is that most of these technical events have free live streams, or if they don't have, they put their videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then you look at their page. I think TabConf, I looked recently, and they have like 50 views for their videos.
Yeah.
And it just makes you wonder why. How
Yeah.
did we get to this point? Like,
Yeah.
you made an investment, right? You bought a lot of Bitcoin. Maybe you
Yeah.
sold something precious to you. You
Yeah.
delayed your gratification a few years because you think this is going to be successful. But don't you want to know why?
Yeah.
Like, you just want to believe that it's going to be successful and you want to make memes, but don't
Mm.
you want to understand what this does and
Yeah.
what you actually bought?
Yeah. Yeah. It's surprising that people that are investing, as you said, like maybe some significant part of their life savings and so on, and they don't take time to try to understand why and so on. It is sad for sure. And I saw this phenomenon particularly accelerated recently, like this cycle with the new wave of people that are simping Michael Saylor and stuff like that. Yeah, unfortunately. Anyway, yeah.
I see the same struggle with my podcast because it's not technical enough to be like the UpTech newsletter,
Mm.
and it's not newbie friendly enough to be in the
Yeah.
same league as other shows. And there's some value in this in between space, but it's also not the popular space.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, for sure. I guess it's pretty niche, like the kind of audience. Unfortunately, but I wish, honestly, I believe that this exactly in between is probably the most important thing, because this is the thing that can bridge them to the other part at some point ultimately, because there is no way they can jump from the extreme to the other extreme. So it's very important that people do that. Actually, what you are doing is very important for education. I wonder how we can help in general, like pushing more this kind of stuff and giving the curiosity for people to understand that it's hard, it's complex, but it is accessible if you want. There are resources to get into it and so on, and you will find your way. Yeah.
I mean, Starkware did sponsor a few of my episodes last year, and then the marketing guy complained that I don't have enough views, even though I told him from the beginning that this is
Yeah.
not the most popular show. And it's like this loop, right? Because
Yeah.
on one hand, developers and people who are into this are happy that this exists
Yeah.
because it gives a platform, it pushes ideas. But on the other hand, marketers are not happy because they have to justify
Yeah.
the expenditure with numbers. And they say, wait a second, we paid for this episode, which only had 200 views on YouTube.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I see what you mean. Like they think about KPIs and stuff like that, ROI, and it's sad. I agree with you, and you told me that privately, and I can say also publicly that I'm sad about that.
no,
Um,
it's fine. Just water
yeah.
under the bridge. But what I mean is that I've learned over time that it doesn't matter how many people listen, it's all about who listens. And when
Exactly. You
Robin
said that
Linus
on the
sends
tweet.
me a
Yeah, exactly.
DM and
Yeah,
says, hey man, I listened to your
yeah,
episode with this guy and it was really good,
yeah. I
that's
saw
where the
when you tweeted
value
that.
is.
Yeah, when you tweeted that the important is who is listening, and I totally agree with you. This is why you should continue no matter what. It's very important, even if it's not a lot of people. Some people actually really like what you do, and I am one of them. To be clear, I already told you, but I say it also publicly. So yeah, you need to continue. I hope it can give you more motivation to continue, and I see
Oh, I'll
that it
keep
will.
going, don't worry. And also,
Yeah,
we got a comment right now from Tugse, I think is the way you say her name, from Citrea, and said, great
ah,
episode. Like,
nice.
it feels like a circle kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone said smoke mass pot go in the chat. I don't get it.
Same.
Got distracted. So what I was saying is that maybe that we're in a situation where all of these development teams are supporting each other and they're listening to the content that they create about each other. But while this is nice, we do need to get to the plebs somehow.
Yeah, we need to break the bubble for sure. Yeah, I agree.
I'm gonna try to make some short clips from some of your explanations, put them on YouTube, see if I start a conversation, because it's useful to have this conversation. It's been how many years since 2009? 16 years. 16 years. Because I'm at season 16 of the podcast. Yeah, makes sense.
Wow.
No, I didn't start from year one. I just started, and at one point they synced, and I said I'm gonna keep a season for as long as this year and Bitcoin's existence takes place. But my point is that in 16 years there were so many breakthroughs in mathematics and cryptography, and it's hard to argue with a straight face that Bitcoin is where it's at and that it should not be improved in any way. For a long time, I was going to conferences, and the prevalent narrative was that we need to move from ECDSA to Schnorr.
Yeah.
And Taproot was that upgrade, but it did not fulfill the whole mission.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. We cannot consider Bitcoin as final right now, and I agree. We need to learn from all the breakthroughs that happened and all the innovation that happened in those 16 years, and see what can be beneficial for Bitcoin. And of course, it has to be done in a proper way, in a conscious manner, and everything. But yeah, but the first step is to get out of the distraction right now of the bullshit, useless debate and drama, and then we can think about the next step.
There's Crev23 in the chat who said, "Stupid, why do people talk like it's the early days? Early days no more."
It is the early days. We are building stuff for decades to come, so it's still the early days, you know. It won't be the early days when there will be 1 billion users using Bitcoin on a daily basis on their daily life. So it's still the early days.
Yeah, the end game is medium of exchange, and we have to get there somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we have been going for 3 hours, 16 minutes.
Wow.
I just want to ask you, what is the special word that people should write in the comments if they get to this point? And that's how we know that they listened.
Easy. Grinta.
What's a grinta?
Grinta. Okay, you don't know grinta. Interesting. So grinta or grinta in Italian. So it's an Italian word that literally means great, determination, but in a very strong way. It became popular in the football field. It means like players that will literally like die on the during the match. They will go beyond injury to transcend their limits and so on. So grinta is a mindset that I really love personally, and it became a meme in Starkware community because I wanted to talk about this mindset to the builders and so on. And I realized that very few people know about it, and you confirmed it. When I say grinta, no one knows what it is, so it's interesting. And I had some fun during BTC in Istanbul because there was an Italian guy that I really liked, and he knew about grinta, and he found it very fun. So grinta is a special word.
So how do you spell it? Grinta?
Yeah.
I think grind comes from this.
Exactly. Like, probably it's the same roots. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay, so
at least great. Yeah.
Grinta. Type that in the comments if you listened up to this point. Thank you very much, Abdel, for your time and explanations and expertise. Thanks to everyone who listened. I think we are, we're at 1,100 views on Twitter, and I don't know on YouTube. It's gonna add up.
That's cool.
So thanks to everyone who tuned in for this, and I'll see you in the next one where I will interview someone named Shai who's working on improving proof of work.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks.